Noah was a young man with a heart full of dreams, but only one skill to speak of: parrying. This wasn't exactly the flashiest talent, but it did come in handy when he accidentally knocked a bowl off the table. Growing up, Noah's life revolved around helping his sick mom. Every day was a balancing act of trying to be a great son and not tripping over his own feet. One particular day, Noah had just finished bringing her a cup of water, which he nearly spilled on the way to her bedside. With her weak smile and gentle reminders, she told him to go feed the goats. "Remember, Noah," she said, "don't go past the rocks we've laid out. They're there for a reason." Noah nodded vigorously, trying to look as wise as one could while balancing a cup of water in one hand and tripping over a stray goat in the other. Noah promised he wouldn't stray too far, but he still had that wild rabbit dinner idea in his head. He imagined himself as a brave hunter, striding back with a couple of rabbits slung over his shoulder, much like the heroes in the tales he loved. In reality, though, he probably returned with a bunch of wildflowers and a very confused goat. As he headed out, his mom called him back. Noah, wiping dirt from his face from the unfortunate goat incident, looked up. She seemed to be gathering all her strength for her final request. "Noah," she said softly, "I'm so sorry that I couldn't do more for you. But when I'm gone, I want you to live your life the way you want to. Promise me." Noah promised, though his usual response of "Sure, Mom," was more of a heartfelt "Absolutely. I'll make sure to live wildly," right after feeding these goats. His mom managed a small, proud smile before closing her eyes. That night, Noah, trying to juggle his parrying skills with soup making, entered her room with a bowl of steaming soup. He had hoped it would be a nice end to a long day. Instead, he found her peacefully gone. His heart sank faster than a stone in a well. He put the soup down and sobbed for what felt like an eternity. In his grief, he almost forgot about the goats, but they reminded him by bleating loudly outside. After burying her with the reverence and clumsiness only Noah could muster, he stood by the grave, feeling the weight of his promise. "Well, Mom," he thought, "I guess it's time to live life to the fullest." This was easier said than done. Noah had no idea how to be an adventurer. His most daring act to date was daring to eat his own cooking. The next morning, Noah decided to honor his mother's wish. He ventured out, determined to fulfill his promise. He ventured past the rocks, as if crossing into a new world. His sense of adventure was somewhat deflated when he tripped over a tree root and nearly fell face first into a puddle. Over the next few days, Noah tried to live adventurously, albeit in his own unique way. He became the self-proclaimed master of wild rabbit hunting, which mostly involved a lot of running around with a stick and pretending to be a rabbit. He also discovered the fine art of talking to goats, which he was surprisingly good at. If nothing else, he made the goats feel like they were part of something big, even if it was just a quest for a decent meal. Noah's adventures were far from epic, but they were his own, and in each moment he felt a bit closer to the dream he promised his mom he'd pursue. So with every parry of a branch and every laugh shared with his goat friends, Noah knew he was living his life, if not as a great adventurer, then as a great, albeit somewhat awkward, tribute to his mother's final wish. Life had settled into a quiet routine for Noah. With his mom gone, the house felt emptier than a rabbit hole after a storm. Every day was a mirror image of the last, feeding the goats, sweeping the porch, and occasionally wishing for a bit of excitement. One chilly night, as Noah was rummaging through the top of a shelf for who knows what, probably more hay or a very dusty jar of pickles, he stumbled upon an old tattered book. He'd been reaching for a particularly elusive jar when he lost his balance and grabbed the book by accident. It tumbled down with him, landing on his chest with a thud. Noah stared at the book in his hands. The cover was faded, but the title, The Amazing Adventures of Sir Bravado, still shone through. It was the same book his dad used to read to him, back when his dad was around and life had a little more sparkle. The tales of Sir Bravado slaying dragons, mastering magic, and dispelling curses had always seemed so fantastical, like a dream too far away to ever grasp. As he flipped through the pages, the stories sprang back to life. It was like being a kid again, curled up on the floor, listening to his dad's dramatic readings and imagining himself as the hero. Suddenly, a spark lit up inside Noah. This was more than just a book, it was a beacon calling him to something more. It wasn't just about the dragons or the magic, it was about the idea of chasing after something bigger than the same old daily grind. The next day, Noah got up with a new determination. He filled the goats' troughs with hay, making sure they'd be well fed while he was away. They watched him with their usual goatish curiosity, as if they could sense he was up to something. After he was done, Noah made his way to his parents' graves. It was time for a new kind of conversation. Standing there, he told them about his newfound goal, as if they could hear him through the rustling leaves. "I found something to strive for," he said. "I'm going to become an adventurer, just like Sir Bravado. I don't know what dragons or curses await, but I'm ready to find out." He said his goodbyes, feeling a mix of excitement and melancholy. It was strange to be leaving behind his childhood home and the familiar routines, but he knew it was the right time. With a final, nostalgic glance at the place where he'd spent so many years, Noah took a deep breath and stepped toward the barrier that had kept him within his safe little world for so long. As he crossed the boundary around his home, Noah felt a rush of exhilaration and trepidation. The world beyond was a vast unknown full of possibilities and challenges. But with the stories of Sir Bravado fresh in his mind and his heart set on adventure, Noah was ready to face whatever lay ahead. It was a new chapter in his life, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. After leaving his home, he spends the night out in the woods, and by the next day, he has finally made it to the big city. He walks up to the city gates to ask about the location of the Adventurers Guild, and the guards are nice enough to point him in the right direction. Noah walks through the gates and is amazed by the sight he sees before him. This is more people than he has ever seen in his entire life, and they are all living in the same place. While walking through the streets, Noah bumps into an adventurer, and his eyes instantly light up even more as he remembers why he came here to begin with. Noah eventually arrives at the Adventurers Guild, and he is ready to make his dream come true, but the only thing standing in his way is the buff receptionist who tells him that he is too young to become an adventurer and should just head home before his parents get worried. However, seeing as both of Noah's parents are 6 feet under, becoming an adventurer is the only thing Noah can aspire to do. The receptionist now understands Noah's situation a bit better, so he goes up to him and says Noah can become an adventurer. Most new adventurers aren't as young as him, but if he really wants to do it, he's not going to stop him. However, the receptionist has one condition. Noah must first go to a training school so that he can acquire some useful skills. It doesn't matter if it's swordsmanship, magic, or archery. Noah just needs to learn a useful skill. Noah is happy that he is being given a chance, so he immediately heads over to the training school to begin learning. As he arrives at the gate, he decides that he will learn swordsmanship since the story from his adventurer book said the adventurer used a sword to slay a dragon in a single swing. Noah begins his training arc. As he is practicing, a random background character unlocks his hidden potential. Noah sees this and is just motivated to work even harder. But by the time a few months have passed and all the other background characters have unlocked their abilities and Noah is the only one who can't get anything special to happen. Eventually, the instructor tells Noah that he should stop, but Noah pleads with him for a little more time to practice. However, the instructor tells him that no amount of time is going to get him a sword skill. It's been months of training, and while it's unfortunate, if Noah hasn't gotten a skill by now, then he will likely never get one, so he should stop wasting his time. The only thing he has managed to learn this entire time is how to parry attacks, so the instructor advises Noah to choose a different profession since his talent may lie elsewhere. Noah is disappointed that he can't become a swordsman, but he takes his instructor's advice and goes to a different training school to learn how to become a warrior. But after several months of grueling training, all Noah has been able to accomplish is achieving a slightly better physique than before. The instructor can't let him continue training any further in this profession, otherwise it could become dangerous to his health. Noah's determination was something to behold. After his initial excitement wore off, he tried his hand at becoming a hunter. He figured if he couldn't be an adventurer right away, maybe hunting would be a good start. He set off with a bow and arrow, ready to conquer the wild. Unfortunately, his bow skills were as impressive as a fish trying to climb a tree. Every time he drew the bowstring, it either snapped or veered wildly off course, often resulting in broken equipment and a lot of embarrassment. Not one to be easily discouraged, Noah decided to give other professions a shot. He tried his hand at blacksmithing, but every piece of metal he worked on ended up looking like a misshapen lump. Then he tried carpentry, which led to an unfortunate incident involving a collapsing shelf and a very annoyed carpenter who had to repair Noah's work. Noah even took a turn at alchemy, though his potions mostly resulted in bubbling messes and occasional bursts of colorful smoke that made the neighbors wary. Despite his best efforts, each new skill he attempted seemed to turn into a spectacular failure. He was always an enthusiastic beginner, but remained perpetually at the starting line. Noah's constant struggles led him to believe that maybe he was just destined to be mediocre. It didn't help that every time he visited a new training school, he left with the same outcome: a slight dent in his wallet, and a bruised ego. After 3 months of bouncing from one failed profession to another, Noah found himself back at the Adventurers Guild. He trudged up to the receptionist's desk, who greeted him with a polite smile that barely masked her curiosity. He took a deep breath. "I've been everywhere," he said, recounting his journey through various training schools and professions. "I tried hunting, blacksmithing, carpentry, alchemy, you name it. And I couldn't get a single one right. I'm starting to think I might not be cut out for any of this." The receptionist's face softened with sympathy. She listened patiently as Noah detailed his numerous failures. She had seen many hopefuls come and go, but Noah's persistence was something different. "I'm sorry to hear that things haven't worked out," she said once he finished. "It's truly unfortunate. We usually recommend aspiring adventurers to gain some proficiency in specific skills before joining us. It's important for survival out there. But from what you've told me, you've been struggling to find your footing in every skill." Noah nodded, feeling the sting of disappointment. "So does that mean I can't become an adventurer?" The receptionist sighed. "It's not that we don't want to help you, Noah, but adventuring is dangerous work. It requires a certain level of skill and preparedness. If you're having trouble with basic skills, it could put you in a very risky position out there. Our priority is to ensure that our adventurers are ready for the challenges they'll face." Noah's heart sank. It felt like his dream was slipping further away. He appreciated the receptionist's honesty, though it did little to comfort him. He left the guild feeling disheartened, but he knew he couldn't just give up. As he walked away, he reflected on his journey and his constant struggle to fit into a role that seemed forever out of reach. He wasn't sure what his next step would be, but he resolved to keep trying, even if he had to forge his own path without the title of adventurer. After all, even if he didn't have the skills he hoped for, he had an unyielding spirit, and maybe that was worth something too. Noah returns home, having failed to achieve what he set out to do, but even though he knows that he has no talent for adventuring, he is still determined to overcome that by training even harder than before. He carves a practice sword out of wood so that he can begin his new training routine. While he didn't manage to learn any professions, he did learn a sword skill at the beginning, so he's going to keep training that skill in hopes that he may eventually unlock a new skill. He vows to train every morning, afternoon, and night, but even after a full year of training, Noah still hasn't managed to acquire a new skill yet. However, he's now able to parry 10 attacks at a time, so he knows he's at least improving a little. 3 years later, Noah's training has improved his parry skill to the point where he can now parry over 100 swords at once, but he still hasn't gotten any new skills, so he continues training day and night until his sword ends up shattering in his hands. After 10 more years of this training routine, Noah's parry skill has developed to the point that he is now capable of the Mikiri parry and can parry an entire forest with one arm, but even with his godly parry skills, he still hasn't been able to acquire any new skills. At this point, he realizes that no amount of training is going to unlock a new skill for him, so Noah decides to give it one last try and head to the Adventurers Guild to see if he meets their requirements now. As he gets there and writes down his skills, aside from parry, everything else is pretty much useless. The receptionist asks him if these are really all the skills he has, and Noah answers yes, so the receptionist suggests that Noah take a look at the training program so he can get some more useful skills. But Noah tells her that he has already gone to every training school in the city and hasn't been able to gain any useful skills in spite of it. The receptionist apologizes, but there is nothing she can do to help him register since his skills don't meet the criteria for registration. Just then, the former receptionist, who is now the guild master, comes out of the back to see what's going on. Noah immediately recognizes him, but the man takes a minute to remember who Noah is since he grew so big. Once he finally remembers Noah, he sits down with Noah and asks how he has been. Noah tells him everything he has done since he last met the man, which was literally nothing but training. However, through all that training, Noah was only really able to improve his parry skill a little. The guild master tells Noah that there are different ranks of adventurers, and to become an E-rank adventurer, he would need to have at least 2 useful skills. But since he doesn't meet that criterion, he can't become an E-rank adventurer. However, that doesn't mean there is no way for him to become an adventurer, as there is a rank below E rank which just requires you to have 2 functioning brain cells. Noah is excited to hear this, but the guild master tells him that there are conditions for this rank, meaning he is forbidden from taking on any quests that involve killing monsters or leaving the city to gather items. That restricts him to quests that are basically miscellaneous tasks that no one else wants to do. No one has ever been dumb or desperate enough to agree to become F rank, but there's a first time for everything. Noah asks the guild master to sign him up for it. The guild master doesn't think it's a good idea, but Noah is so insistent that he caves and gives him an F rank license. Noah is really happy and immediately runs off to complete his first quest by using his physical enhancement to carry a ton of goods for delivery. He also uses the rest of his weak skills to help him in day-to-day quests, and he finds it to be very fulfilling. He has finally achieved his dream of becoming an adventurer, being of use to the people around him, even if it's just F rank. While he still dreams of being something more than a glorified errand boy, he's happy with what he has. By the next day, we see Noah start the day off by single-handedly clearing out a gutter for an old lady, after which he begins his construction job by carrying a metric ton of cement on his shoulders and making it look like lightweight. By the end of the day, the construction foreman thanks Noah for all his hard work since they are way ahead of their usual schedule because of him. As Noah stood in the guild lobby, feeling utterly defeated, the foreman's voice droned on about the practicalities of adventuring and the skills needed for the job. Noah barely registered the words, his mind still spinning from the receptionist's harsh reality check. But then something unusual caught his attention, a faint sound coming from the direction of the dungeon. He strained to hear it, realizing it was a girl's scream for help. Without a second thought, Noah's instincts kicked in. He didn't have the luxury of standing by and pretending he hadn't heard. He bolted towards the dungeon entrance, his heart pounding louder than his footsteps. As he entered the dark, winding corridors, the sounds of battle grew louder, spurring him on. When he finally reached the source of the commotion, Noah's eyes widened in shock. A huge minotaur, with its massive horns and muscular frame, was bearing down on a group of knights and a girl who looked like she'd been dragged into a nightmare. Noah had never seen a minotaur before, and in his panic-stricken state, he mistook it for a colossal cow. In his daze, Noah stopped in his tracks. "Is that a giant cow?" he muttered to himself, his jaw dropping at the sight. The minotaur charged forward, its hooves pounding the ground with a thunderous force. It was clear that whatever this creature was, it wasn't the docile farm animal he imagined. The knights were doing their best to protect the girl, but the situation was dire. They fought valiantly, their swords flashing in the dim light, but the minotaur was a relentless force. One knight, in a desperate bid to protect the girl, pushed her out of the way. The action saved her, but it was a fatal mistake for him. He was sliced cleanly in half by the minotaur's mighty axe. The gruesome sight made Noah's stomach churn, and he rushed over to the fallen knight's side. Noah knelt beside the knight, but the sight of the man's severed body was too much. There was no way he had survived such a brutal blow. The sight was both horrifying and sobering, and Noah felt a deep pang of helplessness. The girl who had been saved by the knight's sacrifice was now huddled against the wall, terror-stricken and vulnerable. Despite his lack of skills, Noah couldn't just stand by. His heart was pounding as he realized that, even without training or the right equipment, he had to do something. His previous failures in various professions didn't matter now. He had to act. Taking a deep breath, Noah grabbed a nearby sword that had been dropped by one of the knights. It felt heavy and awkward in his hands, but he couldn't let that stop him. He rushed forward, swinging the sword with all his might at the minotaur. The blade barely made a dent in the creature's thick hide, but it got its attention. The minotaur roared, its attention now divided between Noah and the girl. Noah's heart raced as he continued to fight desperately, swinging the sword clumsily but with determination. He wasn't sure if he was doing any good, but his presence at least seemed to be buying the girl some time. The minotaur, though distracted, was still a formidable foe. Noah's attempts to fend it off were proving futile, but he was determined to keep the monster occupied long enough for someone else to step in. In the midst of the chaos, Noah could hear the girl's cries of fear, but he also heard something else, voices approaching from the distance. Reinforcements were on the way. With renewed hope, Noah continued to distract the minotaur, his resolve growing stronger with each swing of the sword. He knew he wasn't a trained adventurer, but he was giving everything he had to protect the girl and honor the fallen knight's sacrifice. As the sounds of reinforcements drew nearer, Noah clung to the hope that he wouldn't be the only one fighting this battle. Even if he was clumsy and inexperienced, he was determined to stand his ground until help arrived. The minotaur continues slaughtering all the knights until the only one left alive is the girl, and she is clearly unable to move. If Noah doesn't do something soon, she will die as well. He picks up a sword and grabs a rock to throw at the minotaur. This gets its attention, so the minotaur charges at him, and as it tries to stab Noah with its horns, Noah performs a perfect parry and sends it flying into a random building in the dungeon. The Minotaur gets back up and begins striking at Noah with its axe, so Noah is forced to continuously parry the attack since a single direct hit would kill him. Normally, a person would only parry attacks in order to create an opening for a counterattack. Noah's heart was racing as he swung the heavy sword at the Minotaur. But with no attack skills to speak of, all he could do was defend. His attempts to fend off the beast were futile. He could only manage to keep the Minotaur's attention focused on him. The creature, frustrated by Noah's ineffectual strikes, suddenly seemed to remember the girl cowering behind him. Without warning, the Minotaur turned and charged towards the girl, its massive axe raised high. Noah's eyes widened in panic. He couldn't let it reach her. Desperately, he activated his feather step skill. Though he was still inexperienced, the skill allowed him to move with surprising speed. He dashed in front of the girl just in time to intercept the Minotaur's attack. The Minotaur's axe came down with tremendous force, and Noah threw himself into the path of the blow. His sword met the axe head-on, but the impact was too great. The sword shattered into splinters, leaving Noah defenseless and vulnerable. The Minotaur roared in triumph, preparing to strike again. Noah, though his weapon was gone, didn't let fear overcome him. He had resolved to protect the weak, even if he wasn't an extraordinary hero. Summoning every ounce of courage he had, Noah grabbed the shattered hilt of his sword and prepared to face the beast with whatever he had left. As the Minotaur's axe came down once more, Noah braced himself. With a last burst of adrenaline, he used the broken sword to perform a Mikiri counter, a technique he had read about but never practiced. With a precise and desperate motion, Noah aimed to deflect the incoming strike. To his astonishment, the technique worked. The Minotaur's axe was knocked off course, and in a dramatic twist, it flew back and struck the Minotaur itself. The beast's head was cleaved cleanly off, and it toppled to the ground with a thunderous crash. Noah stood there, panting and shaken, staring at the Minotaur's lifeless body. The girl, still in shock, looked up at Noah with wide eyes. He turned to her, realizing that, despite his lack of formal skills, he had managed to protect her. As the echoes of battle faded away and reinforcements finally arrived, Noah felt a strange mix of exhaustion and elation. He had done it. He had defended someone, even if it was in the most unexpected and clumsy way. The knights who arrived took over the scene, and Noah was finally able to take a moment to catch his breath. The girl, still trembling, approached Noah. "Thank you," she said softly. "You saved my life." Noah gave a tired smile. "I'm just glad I could help." Despite the chaos and the broken sword, Noah felt a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't the grand adventure he had dreamed of, but he had faced danger head-on and made a difference. As he left the dungeon, Noah reflected on the day's events. He might not have been a skilled adventurer, but he had proven to himself that he could stand up and protect those in need. And so, with a newfound resolve, Noah walked away from the dungeon, ready to face whatever came next. It wasn't about becoming a legendary hero, it was about being someone who never backed down from doing what was right. A while later, a cleanup crew is brought in to move the Minotaur along with all the people who died fighting it. Princess Lin feels personally responsible for all their deaths. Just then, her knight rushes up to her and apologizes for not accompanying her when she came out to the dungeon since it is her job to protect Lin. But Lin tells her it's not her fault. This was just meant to be a basic trial for the right to succeed the throne, so it wouldn't have made sense to force her knight to accompany her. Just then, another knight tells Lin that they need to return to the castle soon since Lord Rain wants to have a word with her, and she already knows what this is going to be about. Back at the castle, Lord Rain has just finished speaking with Lin to understand what happened to her, but none of it makes sense to him. The only way a Minotaur could have ended up in that area of the dungeon was if it was magically summoned by someone. The knight agrees with that assumption and believes that the cause of the incident has something to do with the merchant who was found dead at the scene with a ring. Upon inspection, it was discovered that the magic stone of the ring has an unusually high level of purity, and that's not something that can be sold on the market. Normally, a Minotaur is a threat-level demon, so no random rich guy could buy something that could control one. The crest on the ring indicates that it originated from the magical empire of Doritos, so Rain believes they were behind this since they've always had beef with him. But even then, the fact that they blatantly attempted to assassinate Lin and didn't even bother to get rid of the evidence must mean they are trying to bait Rain into starting a war so they can gain control of the dungeon. That aside, Rain also has to think about the guy who saved Lin since, according to the reports, he was able to defeat the Minotaur in seconds with nothing but a broken sword. On top of that, the castle spies tried to follow him as he was leaving, but he literally vanished before their eyes. Rain can't believe what he's hearing, so he is really interested in figuring out who this mysterious warrior is. Meanwhile, Noah has just returned to the guild, and the guild master is surprised that he is still alive. He heard about a demon appearing in the dungeon, and it was right next to the construction site Noah was working on, so he thought Noah might have gotten himself killed. Noah apologizes for worrying him and explains that he was being followed by some shady people last night, so he had to shake them off and went home without reporting what happened. The guild master says Noah is lucky to be alive since a minotaur is a demon so strong that even an A-rank adventurer would instantly die if they had to face it. Noah still doesn't realize that the guild master is talking about the same cow he killed, so he asks what happened to this demon. The guild master tells him it was taken out by some mysterious man. Noah remains oblivious to the fact that he is the mysterious man in question, so he just carries on with a report for the jobs he completed today. The guild master gives him his payment but reminds Noah that he is better off just getting a regular job since he would get paid more that way. Noah doesn't care how much money he makes as long as he gets to be an adventurer. Just then, Lynn shows up behind Noah and says she's glad she finally found him. She apologizes for invading his privacy, but she really wanted to meet him again, so she used her long-distance detection skill to find him. Noah assumes she must be a thief-class adventurer if she has a detection skill, but Lynn says she's actually a magician. She just has skills in all the different classes, even if they are only basic. The guild master and the other patrons are starting to recognize Lynn, so she asks if she and Noah can talk outside. But before he does, the guild master grabs Noah and asks him what he did for Lynn to be talking to him. Noah says he hasn't done anything illegal, meaning he shouldn't be in trouble or anything, so the guild master tells him to go with Lynn and to make sure he doesn't do anything dumb. Outside, Lynn conceals herself and Noah with one of her skills so no one can see them. Once they are finally in a secluded spot, Lynn apologizes once more for barging in on Noah when a man with his power would probably be pretty busy. Noah says it's fine, so Lynn begins by thanking him once more for what he did. Not only did he save her life, but he also saved the lives of countless people in the nation. Noah doesn't think he deserves such high praise since all he did was take down a cow. In fact, he is pretty sure Lynn could have handled it by herself if he hadn't shown up. Noah has no idea how he drew that conclusion when he saw several knights get murdered by this same cow, so Lynn tries to make him understand that she would have definitely died if he hadn't come to her rescue. Noah stood firm, his resolve unshakable. Lynn, meanwhile, was on a mission. She had offered him everything from pizza to a lifetime supply of socks. Noah, though, remained steadfast, maintaining that a simple thank you was all he needed. Lynn, with her eyes wide and hands almost wringing themselves in desperation, refused to let the matter drop. She suggested a trophy, then a territory of his own, and even an entire island, all to no avail. Noah's refusal was unwavering. He wasn't interested in any of it. The idea of becoming a kingpin or receiving grandiose rewards seemed absurd to him. His laughter was barely contained as Lynn's offers grew more elaborate and impractical. Despite Lynn's insistence and the escalating nature of her suggestions, Noah was simply not swayed. Her father's eagerness to thank him in person was met with the same firm refusal. Noah had no desire for any form of recognition or reward. He understood the sentiment behind Lynn's gestures, but was adamant about keeping things simple. In the end, Lynn's attempts to offer something, anything, had resulted in a comical display of creative rewards and heartfelt pleas. Noah's only request was that the matter be left as it was. He appreciated the gesture but had no intention of accepting anything beyond the initial gratitude. As Noah walked away, Lynn's attempts had reached a peak of absurdity, but his resolve remained unbroken. It was clear that no amount of creative rewards could change his mind. Lynn starts crying and tells Noah that he has to accept her gratitude and that she's not moving from this spot until Noah says he will accept something from her. Noah remembers a time when he used this same tantrum technique to get a cleric to train him, and since he doesn't want Lynn to end up standing here for hours, he ends up agreeing to meet with her father. But he still doesn't want any extravagant gifts. Lynn is happy to hear it, so she says Noah should follow closely behind her so she can use her concealment skills to make sure no one spots them. Eventually, Noah is brought to Lynn's house, and as he is led inside, Lynn asks him for his name, which Noah is happy to provide. But Noah still doesn't know who Lynn is, so she apologizes for being rude and immediately introduces herself as Lindbergh Clays. But that's a really long name, so she's usually called Lynn. After seeing this house, Noah now realizes that Lin wasn't joking when she said her family was wealthy, so it makes sense why the guild master was worried about him making a fool of himself. As they are walking, they run into Anna, and Lin is happy to see her, so she runs up to her and asks where her father is. Anna tells her that her father is currently having a meeting with Rain, so he is a little busy now. But that aside, she wants to know who the man standing over there is. Lin explains that Noah is the one who saved her life. Anna says she will lead them to Lin's father. Noah has never heard of a royal knight, so he assumes Anna must be a family maid who really loves wearing armor for some reason. He can also tell that Anna doesn't like him for some reason, but he has no idea why. As they are walking, they come across a man chilling by the window. As soon as he notices them, he gets up and asks what Lin is up to and who this random guy is. Lin tells Gilbert to put his spear away since Noah is her guest, and it is very rude to point weapons at guests. Gilbert realizes that Noah must be the person who saved Lin's life, so he puts his weapon down and asks Noah to accompany them to the room because she could use all the help she can get. Gilbert now has a bad impression of Noah, and Noah can already tell that things aren't going to end well for him at this rate. But he keeps walking. In the throne room, the king is in the middle of a meeting with Rain and is upset because it is clear that Doritas doesn't care about honoring their peace treaty. Rain has been expecting this ever since the last meeting with the king of Doritas, where he demanded that the rights to the dungeon be relinquished to him. The demand was obviously rejected, but ever since then, the king of Doritas has been plotting their downfall. Just then, Lin and the others arrive in the throne room, and Lin excitedly goes over to greet her brother and father. Anna and Gilbert kneel to show their respect for the king, but Noah keeps on walking. The king notices that Lin is wearing the disguise cloak, meaning she must have gone outside without permission, but she says she had to because there was no other way for her to find the man that saved her. The king realizes that she must be referring to Noah. Noah apologizes for coming here in such a messy state, but Lin wanted to come here as soon as possible. He also says he isn't an aristocrat or anything, so he isn't aware of the proper etiquette for situations like these, so he may accidentally say something rude. But the king tells him that he's fine with it since it is much easier to speak without having to worry about etiquette. The king extends his hand to Noah and formally thanks him for saving Lin's life. Noah says it's no big deal, so a simple thank you is enough for him, but the king says he can't let Noah go without giving him a decent reward. So he says Noah can ask for any amount of money or land he wants. However, Noah still doesn't want anything. The king is taken aback, but he still raises the reward by offering Noah half of all the treasures they have acquired from the dungeon. Rain thinks a reward like that is too much to be given to a single man, but Noah still doesn't want it. The king doesn't know what to give Noah since he keeps rejecting everything, so he goes over to his throne and picks up the sword hanging on it as a gift for Noah. Rain doesn't think it's a good idea to give away such a valuable sword, but the king says it's okay since he never uses it anymore, and no one would find out as long as he replaces it with a replica. He hands it to Noah, and as soon as it is in Noah's hand, he can feel how heavy it is. From how Rain reacted, Noah can tell that the sword is worth a lot, and he doesn't want to accept any extravagant gifts. But the king says it's just something he picked up while he was still an adventurer, so it's fine for Noah to accept it. Noah agrees to accept it, so the king asks him to give it a test swing. Noah obliges and swings the sword in the air, generating a huge amount of force and surprising everyone around him. The king praises Noah for being able to swing the sword with one hand, but he also has a request to make. He wants Noah to help train Lin on how to be an adventurer, but Noah says there's nothing he could possibly teach someone as talented as Lin. Besides, Noah thinks Lin should be the one to decide something like this for herself. After that, Noah thinks he should probably start heading home, and as he is leaving, he realizes something special about his sword. It's the perfect shape to fit inside the gutters that he usually cleans, so he's going to try it out tomorrow morning. Before he leaves, he is approached by Anna, and she says she wants to talk with him first. She apologizes for her rude behavior earlier, as it was completely uncalled for, but Noah says he doesn't mind at all. Her job is to protect the Clay's family at any cost, so she is deeply grateful to Noah for saving the life of Lin. To express her gratitude, she promises to assist Noah if he ever needs help. Noah doesn't want to go back and forth with her about this, so he just accepts her offer and says he will ask her if he ever needs anything. That aside, Anna also warns Noah that he's never allowed to speak to the king so casually again because even if the king allowed it for now, she will not let such disrespect slide next time. Noah says he understands, so Anna is in a good mood and asks him for his name. Upon hearing that his name is Noah, she seems oddly shocked. Noah asks if he did something wrong again, but Anna says it's nothing and takes her leave. Noah is about to leave as well, but he is stopped by Gilbert, who wants to challenge him to a fight. Gilbert leads him to the castle's training room, where a small crowd has gathered. They feel sorry for the poor soul who chose to go up against Captain Gilbert. As the match begins, Gilbert makes the first move, but Noah easily dodges it. Gilbert continues to attack, and while Noah is dodging his attacks, he remarks that Gilbert's moves are incredibly precise. He can only imagine the amount of training Gilbert had to do to get himself to this level. There's one thing he can't understand. If Gilbert is such a skilled adventurer, then why are his attacks so slow? Noah has never practiced with another person before, so he assumes that Gilbert must be moving slow intentionally since Noah is a novice adventurer. Noah calls for a timeout and tells Gilbert that he doesn't have to go easy on him that much. While Gilbert was indeed holding back a little, he agrees to take things up a notch. He charges at Noah with full force. His attacks are much faster now, but Noah still finds it odd that Gilbert is leaving himself wide open for a counterattack. Noah thinks there's no way Gilbert can possibly be this defenseless against him, so he assumes that Gilbert must be luring him in for a trap. Meanwhile, Gilbert doesn't understand why he can't land a single hit on Noah with his spear, so he tries using one of his signature moves on Noah. While Noah is surprised, he simply jumps into the air to evade it, and when Gilbert tries to strike him midair, he just ducks underneath the attack. None of these attacks have made Noah so much as break a sweat, so he tells Gilbert that it's fine if he speeds up even more since he's been going way too slow. Gilbert's pride is wounded by that statement, and Noah is finally starting to realize that all this solo training might have actually made him strong. All of a sudden, Gilbert uses his ultimate skill in an attempt to at least land one hit on Noah. Once the dust has settled, Noah has vanished and appears by Gilbert's side. To Gilbert's surprise, Noah says he gives up. After that, Noah heads home for the day, glad he made it out of there before things got bad. But back at the training hall, Gilbert's subordinates are busy trying to come up with reasons why Gilbert is definitely still stronger than Noah, even though his ultimate move didn't work. Deep down, Gilbert knows that he lost in every way imaginable. Gilbert had a talent for the spear ever since the first day he picked one up, so there was no one who could stand up to his power. The more he trained, the more powerful his techniques got, and the more strength he gained. But through it all, he felt nothing but boredom since he never found a worthy opponent for himself. He went around the kingdom in search of strong opponents, but after he had already defeated every warrior in this particular village, the village chief apologized and said there was no one here to match his strength. The chief went on to tell him that there are rumors going around about the relations between the kingdom and a foreign country collapsing, so they are calling for strong troops to prepare for the likelihood of war. If Gilbert is lucky, he might end up meeting someone who can give him the challenge he has been so desperately looking for. Gilbert returned to the capital, and no single troop member was capable of standing up to him. Demon slaying was no longer a fun endeavor for him either. No matter how big the demon was, he was sick of being surrounded by weaklings. One day, while he was relaxing under a tree, his instructor walked up to him and asked why he looked so glum when he had just been crowned the Spear Sovereign. Even with the fancy title, Gilbert was still as bored as ever since he was surrounded by total weaklings. His instructor pointed out that Anna is a strong person. While Gilbert agreed, he felt Anna's strength was of a different kind. Whenever they had mock battles, Gilbert always ended up being the definitive victor. He thought things would be a lot more interesting if there were more competent people around like his instructor. He knew his instructor must be bored as well, especially since he had to train a bunch of rookie adventurers who didn't even measure up to the power in his pinky finger. The instructor admitted that it is a bit boring, but he is tasked with defending the kingdom, and no matter how strong he is, he can't win an entire war by himself. Besides, he was sure that someday an adventurer would show up that surpasses him in strength. When Gilbert heard about a man who managed to defeat a minotaur by himself, he wanted to meet him personally. But Noah made no sense at all. He showed no interest in the most lavish gifts the king had to offer, and he was so casual with the king that Gilbert had to respect him for it. While fighting Noah, Gilbert couldn't sense the power necessary to defeat a minotaur, but that didn't change the fact that Noah was able to dodge all of his moves. Even when he busted out his supersonic spear strike, it still did nothing against Noah, while it would have been a guaranteed death sentence to any other person. On top of that, Noah forfeited the match out of nowhere. Gilbert assumed Noah did it out of courtesy since he didn't want to embarrass him in front of his subordinates. As Noah was leaving, Gilbert noticed a bunch of cracks in the floor. He had no idea how they got there or what Noah did to cause them. But what he did know was that Noah was able to dodge his ultimate attack while he was at full power. He had finally found the truly worthy opponent he had been searching for. As Noah walks home, he thinks about how foolish he was to think that he was strong when Gilbert used his ultimate attack. Even after Noah used his physical enhancement and feather step abilities, he was only able to barely evade the strike. Gilbert must have been holding back just enough to prove a point since there's no way he would actually use a lethal move in a mock battle. He feels thankful to Gilbert for reminding him that he is still weak, so he's going to train even harder from now on. The next morning, Noah is busy with his usual gutter cleaning job, and he is using the legendary sword to do it. He's shocked at how well the sword works for this since the gutters have never been so clean before. Thanks to the sword's durability, it hasn't gotten even slightly scratched after all Noah has done with it. However, once he's done with his gutter cleaning, he is left with nothing to do since his construction job got put on hold because of the incident in the dungeon. Since he is only allowed to accept F-rank jobs, if work in the royal capital ever dries up, there may be entire days that he will have nothing to do. Noah doesn't want that to happen since his goal is to be useful to people. He considers starting a boat ride business and using the sword as an oar, but then he realizes that he would have to own a boat for that. He considers making pizzas, but then he would need an oven. He finally considers making a grill out of his sword, but that won't work either since he can only make a flame with his fingertips. Just then, Noah hears some rustling in the bushes, so he turns around and finds Lynn standing there. She apologizes for showing up like this, but she couldn't find him at the guild, so she asks the guild master where Noah would be. Noah understands, but he didn't tell the guild master his exact location, so Lynn must have used her tracking abilities to find him. Noah asks why Lynn is here, so she gets straight to the point and tells Noah that she has a special request to ask of him. She wants Noah to accept her as his page, but Noah has never even heard of a page before. Lynn explains that it is an unpaid assistant who takes care of all of Noah's daily necessities in hopes of gaining some useful knowledge from him. She's fine with just being allowed to hang around Noah, and she promises that she won't cause him any trouble, but Noah still refuses. She asks if she has done something to offend Noah or if he thinks she is unreliable, but Noah tells her that's not the case. She tries to assure him that she can be of use since she has scored the highest marks in all 6 training schools, but her competence isn't the issue here. There's just nothing for Noah to teach her, and he doesn't need her to help him with his work either since he is perfectly capable of doing it on his own. Lynn tries to offer Noah a huge salary if he agrees to be her instructor, but he still doesn't care about money. Lynn offers to let him use her to do whatever he wants, but Noah turns her down again. He really just doesn't have anything for Lynn to do, but she remains insistent and wants to prove to him that she can be useful. She takes out her wand and says she's going to demonstrate her competence. She casts an ice spell to fire several icicles at herself, but before she gets hit, she uses a fire spell to destroy them. She tells Noah that this is the highest level of magic she can use. In addition to that, she has also learned the secret skill of the thief class called Mistblade. She learned it directly from the Sovereign of Shadows, and it's strong enough to easily cut down a tree with one swing. Next, she wants to show Noah her sword skill, so she sends a divine slash straight towards Noah, but he effortlessly evades. The damage that is done to the tree is proof of how powerful the move is, and it's even got bonus damage when used against undead monsters. She's about to show him more of her skills, but Noah tells her that he has seen enough. Lynn thinks this means he is willing to accept her as his page, but Noah still denies her request. Noah realizes Lynn must think he is someone worth studying under, but after seeing everything she is capable of doing, Noah honestly feels inferior compared to her. He tries telling her once more that there's nothing he can teach her, but Lynn takes that to mean that Noah thinks she's too weak to become his student. She asserts that her power has been acknowledged by all the 6 sovereigns, and she assures she can be useful to Noah in some way if he lets her join him. Noah's point still isn't getting through, so he tells Lynn that she possesses many amazing skills, but this is the current limit of Noah's skills. Lynn is left speechless and leaves Noah alone for today. As she's walking home, she recounts the story of a boy with no talent who went through all 6 training schools. People often thought this was nothing more than a made-up legend since most adults would crumble under the pressure of the rigorous training program at one school, let alone complete the courses at all 6. Lin had thought it was a fake story as well, but she actually got to meet this person back when she was studying magic. Oken showed her something interesting about the basic spell Tiny Flame. While the flame created is usually as small as a point, with enough practice one can make the flame slightly bigger. It had no practical use to him, but he had been alive for 200 years at this point, so practicing the tiny flame became a hobby for him. Since she saw that, Lin has made several attempts to make her tiny flame slightly larger, but no matter what she does, it doesn't grow at all. It's something that requires tireless devotion over a long period of time, which is precisely why she was so shocked when Noah was able to create a massive tiny flame many times bigger than what Oken could have ever done. Oken is the greatest wizard in the world. For Noah's skills to be at such a level means he far outclasses anything Lin could pull off, and it was all done through his own effort. However, all the spells Lin demonstrated were just things she had memorized. Noah had the power to defeat a minotaur, but he still lives a regular life without bragging or showboating. Lin believes Noah is not only strong in body, but also in mind. In the near future, she will be in a position to lead this kingdom alongside her brother and father, and the rule of the Clay's family is that those with royal blood must be strong. She wants to learn how to attain strength like Noah's, so if Noah doesn't want to be her instructor, then she's just going to have to stalk him as much as necessary until he agrees to train her. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the prince was in a state of frustration, pacing back and forth. His father's decision to gift the legendary Black Blade to a man of unknown lineage had him utterly perplexed. The Black Blade was no ordinary weapon. It was a relic from an era when the king himself was an adventurer, a time filled with perilous quests and legendary feats. The prince recalled the story his father had often recounted, a tale of bravery and danger. The sword had been acquired during a particularly harrowing expedition, one that involved delving into the deepest, most treacherous corners of a dungeon alongside the 6 sovereigns. The quest was grueling and fraught with challenges, but it culminated in a significant discovery, the Prime Dungeon, a place of immense power and mystery. To the prince, the Black Blade was more than just a symbol of the king's past adventures. It was a piece of history, and he struggled to understand why it had been given to someone whose background was a complete mystery. The prince's frustration was compounded by the feeling that such a treasured relic deserved a more distinguished recipient. To him, the whole situation seemed like a perplexing twist of fate or perhaps a test whose purpose eluded him. Treasure the blade is made of an unknown material that is stronger than anything that Om has ever seen. Regardless of the skills and powers that were used to test it, there wasn't even a single scratch on it. The sword was dubbed an indestructible sword. The biggest question they had about it was how a weapon that's so resilient managed to end up in such bad shape, but those answers will never be found now that the king has given up the sword. The prince can understand the king's motives since the state of unrest within the kingdom has only gotten worse in recent months. It is possible that the king is counting on Noah to bring some amount of change. At that same moment, Noah and Len are out by a food stand, and Noah asks her if it is all right for her to be casually hanging out with him. She says it's fine since she's acting as an adventurer right now, so she's free to do whatever she wants. In that case, Noah tells her that he was planning on heading to the guild after they've eaten, but he's still not comfortable with the student-sister relationship he has with Lin. He doesn't think he is someone worthy of being called a teacher, but Lin is following him everywhere he goes like it's perfectly normal. Noah thinks if he takes on some of his usual errand quests from the guild, then sooner or later Lin should come to understand that Noah is just a regular dude and lose interest. But with how excited she looks to be following him, that doesn't seem likely. After lunch, Noah and Lin head to the guild, but the guild master is confused to see Noah casually hanging out with the princess. He asks Noah what's going on. Lin reminds the guild master that while she's here, she's just an adventurer, so he shouldn't call her a princess. The guild master apologizes, but now he is even more confused than before, so he asks Noah about it. Noah says it's a really complicated story, but the guild master has been doing this job long enough to know that he doesn't want to get involved in complicated subplots, so he drops the subject and asks Noah if he came here to get another quest. Noah confirms this and asks for one that 2 people can handle. The guild master takes a look at the quests he has available, and since Lin will be joining Noah while she is Silver B rank, Noah now qualifies to take on a goblin hunting quest, which is a total shock to him. Goblin quests are a staple for new adventurers to test their skills, so he is really excited to be allowed to take on such a quest. The guild master says that normally Lin would be able to take this quest or something higher level alone, but since Noah is F rank, this is the best they're allowed to have. Noah is happy to finally be getting a quest that isn't just labor, but he also feels kind of bad since this means he will be taking advantage of Lin's adventurer rank for his own personal gain. Up till now, he has been trying to get Lin to leave him alone, so he doesn't think he deserves to rely on her now. He asks Lin if she's okay with this, since Noah would be using her rank to accept this job. Lin says it's fine since she is just happy to help in any way she can. Noah is glad to hear she's alright with it, even if he still has reservations about relying on a child. But since it's for the sake of one of his dreams, he is willing to go along with it and picks up his sword to head out. However, the guild master hasn't given Noah any information about the quest yet, so Noah has to come back in and ask where exactly he is supposed to be going. After finally approving the quest, the guild master points to a map and tells Noah that he and Lin are meant to head to this area. They are only allowed to report monsters that they actually caught. The location is known as the Forest of Beasts, and as per guild rules, they need to bring back the right years of the goblins they slay in order to get compensated. But then again, there have been reports that goblin populations have been dwindling, so in the event they don't manage to find any goblins, they're allowed to bring back some medicinal herbs or something instead. With that settled, Noah and Lin head to the gatekeepers where their information needs to be reviewed, and after everything is verified, they are both allowed to leave on their quest. A while later, they arrived in the Forest of Beasts, and this is Noah's first time seeing such dense vegetation. The trees are different from the ones he usually sees in the southern forest. While on the topic of things Noah has never seen before, he asks Lin if she can tell him a bit about goblins since he would like to know what they are like before he encounters one. Lin understands and begins telling him about how goblins are monsters that usually hunt small animals and gather fruits for food, but they are also known to attack humans. If left unchecked, their population could easily grow out of control, which is why the guild gives quests like these to help keep the goblin population under control. But goblins are also a valuable part of the forest's ecosystem, so it is best not to hunt them to extinction. Noah is grateful for the information and is also impressed with how much knowledge Lin has about adventuring. But this just means there really isn't anything for him to teach her. As they head deeper into the forest, Lin uses her search ability to scan for any nearby goblins, but she doesn't find anything nearby. Under normal circumstances, they should have already encountered at least one goblin, but it seems like the rumors about dwindling goblin numbers are true after all. While she didn't find any goblins, Lin's scan did manage to pick up on a monster-like creature, but it's a bit far away. Since they don't have any other monsters to hunt, Noah agrees to go searching for this unknown monster. They start heading even deeper into the forest, and the further they go, the denser the trees get, giving the area an ominous vibe. This is the kind of location a goblin would love to hang around, but as they are walking, Lin notices something strange as the presence of the monster they were tracking just disappears all of a sudden. They arrive at the location Lin had previously sensed the monster, but as far as they can tell, there's nothing here. However, Noah notices a pair of dangling legs floating in the air, so Lin casts an uncover spell, and it reveals a massive goblin in the middle of the woods. Noah asks what that thing is, and Lin answers that she thinks it's a goblin. But she probably should have clarified that regular goblins don't have 10-pack abs. Now, Noah thinks all goblins are meant to be this big. The goblin picks up 2 trees to attack them with, and Lin is absolutely freaking out. But Noah just thinks she's scared because she doesn't have much combat experience. However, the real reason she's freaking out is that this thing is a goblin emperor. A goblin emperor is a monster created when scientists lock a goblin in a gym with nothing but protein powder and steroids. On top of already being ridiculously jacked, this one is capable of eating other goblins and ingesting their strength to grow stronger. Noah speaks up and tells her that there's nothing to worry about since from his limited goblin knowledge, even new adventurers should be able to defeat this thing. Seeing Noah remain so confident gives Lin the false impression that he must have known about the Goblin Emperor ahead of time, which is why he was so excited to get to eliminate it. This serious threat makes her have even more respect for Noah than she already did. And since he seems confident in their ability to win this fight, she decides to show a little courage and stand alongside him to fight. The goblin charges towards them, so Noah gets in position and parries all its strikes. The goblin realizes that Noah is too skilled, so it attempts to sweep Noah into a corner to gain the advantage. However, Noah knows what it is trying to do, so he overpowers the goblin, and while it is stun-locked, he instructs Lin to attack. She fires a wind spell followed by an icicle barrage, but even with that, the goblin is moving too quickly for her to get a clean shot off on it. Once the goblin stops running, it chucks a huge tree at Lin, but before she gets hit, Noah runs in front of her and blocks the attack. The goblin continues tossing trees at Noah, and eventually comes up with the idea to overwhelm him by tossing several trees at him from above and one from the front. Now Noah can't block all of them at once. Luckily, before Noah gets hit, Lin uses a wind blast spell and blows the trees away while dealing damage to the goblin. Noah thanks her for the help, but as Lin looks back at the goblin, she is shocked to find that it is healing at an abnormally quick rate. The moan of stone on its head is probably allowing it to replenish its strength, so at this rate they are definitely going to run out of stamina before they can defeat it. Just then, Noah comes up with an idea to defeat the goblin, so he asks Lin to fire a wind blast straight at his back. Lin thinks that's a crazy idea since one of her wind blasts is strong enough to demolish castle walls, so a direct hit is guaranteed to seriously injure Noah. Yet Noah still wants to go through with the plan, and besides, he will have his sword at his back, so he won't be taking the hit directly. The only chance they have at winning is to be faster than the goblin, and this is the only plan they've got, so Lin agrees to help. As the goblin is preparing to attack once more, Lin fires a wind blast at Noah and sends him flying forward at incredible speeds. He blacks out for a second, but after regaining consciousness, he uses his physical enhancement to stabilize himself, feather step to evade the monster's tree tosses, and low heel to relieve the stress on his body. This allows him to get close enough to the goblin and strike it cleanly in the forehead, dislodging the moan of stone. With the moan of stone removed, it will now be a lot easier to kill the goblin, so Noah asks Lin to finish it off, but since it's in a lot of pain already, he asks her not to make it suffer. Lin agrees, but she then proceeds to burn the goblin to death, and I don't think that counts as a suffering-free death. Thankfully, they are done with their quest for today. But Noah says he's going to refrain from going on any more goblin-slaying quests, since he clearly isn't strong enough to handle mere goblins as he is now. Later that evening, the prince has received news of the Goblin Emperor that Noah and Lin defeated, and he is almost certain that the Magic Empire is behind this somehow. But something that really concerns him is the purity of the mono stone that was implanted in the goblin's head. Something like this could only come from the holy theocracy of Mithra, so they now have to worry about them as well. The prince mulled over Lin's update, still grappling with the news that a goblin had managed to evade detection despite its considerable magical prowess. Lin, who had taken on the beast with admirable courage, emerged with only minor injuries, a few scratches here, a bruise there, but nothing that couldn't be mended with some healing potions and a day or two of rest. The goblin's cloaking magic, however, was a different matter. It was so advanced that even the kingdom's top-tier special forces hadn't been able to detect it, leaving the prince to wonder how it had pulled off such a feat. The implications of this discovery were more troubling than amusing. If the goblin had been in the forest for days undetected, it suggested that the magical cloaking wasn't just a fluke, it was a significant step up from the usual spells the kingdom encountered. The prince envisioned the secret corpse, skilled and seasoned, stumbling through the forest, trying to catch sight of the hidden creature. The goblin, meanwhile, had probably been sitting there, concealed by its powerful enchantments, like an elusive shadow with an exceptionally well-kept secret. But the real mystery wasn't just about the goblin's sneaky tactics. It was how the Magic Empire managed to transport such a massive and magical creature into the kingdom without setting off any alarms. The prince couldn't help but wonder if there was a new method of magical transportation that was so sophisticated it made the kingdom's detection systems look obsolete. The magic networks were designed to detect any significant disturbances, especially those involving summoning magic, which was often used for such large-scale movements. Yet there had been no trace of unusual activity, no flickers of energy, no disturbances in the magical aether. It was as if the goblin had just appeared out of nowhere. It was conceivable that the Magic Empire had developed a clever workaround, something that bypassed traditional detection methods. Perhaps they used some form of advanced cloaking combined with mundane methods, like hiding the creature within an enchanted container or using a form of illusion that fooled the kingdom's censors. It could be that they had devised a way to mask their magical signatures, making their operations nearly invisible to magical scrutiny. The thought of a giant goblin being smuggled into the kingdom under everyone's noses was almost comical, if it weren't so alarming. The situation was starting to feel like a magic show gone wrong, where the magician wows the audience with flashy illusions while the real trick, like hiding a giant goblin, happens right under everyone's noses. It was as if the Magic Empire had mastered the art of misdirection so well that the kingdom's defenses were left looking like they were in a bad slapstick routine, bumbling about in a vain attempt to catch the elusive goblin. Imagine the scene: the kingdom's top magical defenses, all sleek and high-tech, were like the overly serious sidekicks in a comedy duo, diligently scanning for disturbances while the goblins sneaked past, its magical cloak sparkling like it had just stepped out of a discount cloak sale. Meanwhile, the magical detectors were probably busily analyzing something completely mundane, like a misplaced feather or a rogue firefly, while missing the big green, cloaked intruder. It was almost as if the Magic Empire had discovered a cheat code for their own game, slipping a giant monster into the kingdom's backyard, while everyone else was busy watching a completely different show. If this kept up, the kingdom's defense teams might need to start attending advanced courses in how not to be duped by fancy tricks 101. The prince's frustration grew as he considered the implications. If the Magic Empire had indeed perfected such a method, it would not only endanger the kingdom's safety but also undermine the effectiveness of its magical defenses. The prince knew that it was crucial to get to the bottom of this mystery before it became a routine problem. The kingdom needed to enhance its magical surveillance and perhaps even reconsider its strategies for detecting covert operations. In the meantime, the goblin incident was a stark reminder of the need for vigilance and innovation in the kingdom's approach to magical security. The prince resolved to assemble the brightest minds to analyze the situation, review the kingdom's magical detection systems, and figure out how to counteract this new threat. The goal was clear: to prevent the Magic Empire from turning their clever tricks into a dangerous advantage. He asks if there were any indications that the Goblin Emperor was in the forest, and the secret corpse mentioned that there was a declining number of regular goblins in the area, which prompted the guild to post jobs to conduct an investigation. And on the off chance that this wasn't an isolated incident, they have gone through the trouble of compiling every strange occurrence that has happened within the past 3 months. The prince thanks them and asks that they keep investigating in case anything else happens so they can report to him. At the same time, Noah and Lynn are reporting to the guild to claim their reward. The guild master asks Noah how his first goblin hunt went, and still thinking the Goblin Emperor was a regular goblin, Noah says it was a lot harder than he expected it to be. And if Lynn hadn't been there to back him up, he has no idea what he would have done. The guild master laughs and assumes that Noah must have been hiding the whole time while Lynn did all the work. Noah is too humbled to give himself any credit, so he says Lynn was indeed the one who finished it off, but he wishes he had known the red stone on the goblin's forehead would be a weak spot earlier. The guild master has no idea what Noah was talking about since regular goblins don't have magic stones on their heads, so he asks if what they fought was really just a goblin. And as far as Noah knows, all goblins are 12 feet tall, so he says it was a normal goblin, and the guild master takes his word for it. The paperwork is officially complete, so now they just need to provide the proof of the goblin kill. However, that's when they remember that Lynn burnt the body to ashes, so there's nothing for them to present as proof. Over in the castle, Prince Rain receives a compiled report of every strange occurrence that has recently occurred in the kingdom, and he is shocked to realize that a lot of these reports are similar to the incident that took place in the Forest of Beasts, meaning the enemy has already infiltrated the kingdom to a large degree. He orders the Secret Service to gather every available member with a search skill and head into the forest to see if they can weed out any intruders. He also wants the 6 sovereigns to be called in to assist as well, since this could be a serious emergency. The Secret Service heads out to fulfill his orders, and Rain can't believe he didn't realize this was going on ahead of time. He has no idea what the Magic Empire might be planning, but he is disgusted that they are willing to put the lives of all the innocent citizens here at risk just because they want the rights to the dungeon back. Meanwhile, Noah and Lynn are currently having a bite to eat, and thankfully the guild master was kind enough to give Noah the reward anyway. Even though there was no proof, he knows Noah and Lynn wouldn't lie about it, and a single goblin isn't worth much anyway, so he saw no harm in it. Noah is glad to have successfully completed his first hunt with Lynn, but he's starting to wonder how long she intends to stick around. Now it's already evening, so the king must have started getting worried by now, right? On cue, Lynn turns to Noah and says she thinks it's around time she heads home for the day, but she'll be back tomorrow and hang around again. Just before she leaves, Rain shows up, but he's not here for Lynn. He actually came looking for Noah since he has a request to ask of him. He apologizes for springing this on him so suddenly, but he wants Noah to head to a city in the mountain district tomorrow morning with Lynn. He says he will provide a carriage as well as an escort for the trip. And of course, Noah will be well compensated for the trouble. Noah seems to be okay with it, so he agrees to accept Rain's request even though he wasn't given much detail about the mission. But the reason Noah accepted in the first place has nothing to do with the mission. He has just never gotten to ride in a carriage before, so he wanted to see what it's like. As the carriage crosses the landscape, Noah is amazed by all the beautiful scenery since the only places he has ever seen are his home and the capital. However, Lin doesn't seem to be enjoying the ride as much as he is. He asks her if she doesn't like the scenery, but Lin agrees that it's rather beautiful. She just feels bad that Noah was burdened with a request from her brother. Noah tells her she doesn't need to worry about it since he's getting paid well for this, and he still owes her a favor for helping him on the goblin hunt anyway. Before they left, Rain explained the route their carriage would take, saying they would first head towards the mountain district of Tauros. Once there, they would wait a little before proceeding. If nothing strange happens while they are there, they will move on and cross the mountain ahead to the holy theocracy of Mithra. Noah asked if it was really okay for him to get paid for this if he didn't have to do anything, and Rain said it was fine. But Noah doing nothing would only happen in the best case scenario, where nothing goes wrong. Lin really hopes everything turns out okay, but even if things do go awry, Anne is here as backup. Anne doesn't want to mention this, but Rain gave her a secret order before they departed. He told her that in the near future, an unprecedented crisis would befall the royal capital, and there isn't much he can do to stop it. So he told Anne that if she were to receive news of the destruction of the royal capital, she was to flee to Mithra with Noah and Lin. He didn't tell Lin of this plan because he knew that she would surely say she wants to stay and fight for the capital, and he can't allow her to put herself in danger. She thinks it is not a good idea for her to leave the capital as Lin and Noah's escort when they are on the verge of a crisis, but Rain insists that her job is of the utmost importance. She is the only one whom he can entrust Lin to, so he needs her to make sure that Lin remains safe no matter what. Back to the present, Anne and the others are currently taking a break by a river, and Anne takes a moment to apologize to Noah for getting mixed up in all this trouble. Noah doesn't understand what she means, since this is supposed to be a regular trip, and more importantly, he notices that Anne seems to be upset about something. So he asks her if something is bothering her. She just says she is a little worried at the moment, especially with her current escort duties meaning she has to keep Noah safe as well. Noah tells her she doesn't need to worry about him since he's perfectly capable of defending himself, and if things end up really bad, he will run away if necessary, and tells him she wouldn't mean to do that since if things go wrong, she can protect him and Lin with her shield. Noah is surprised that Anne has a shield with her since she doesn't look like she has any equipment on her. So Anne offers to show him her shield and uses her skill to generate a shield of green light in front of her. Noah is even more amazed than before, and Anne tells him that he's free to seek shelter behind it if they find themselves in serious danger. According to what he heard from Lin, Gilbert is supposedly strong enough to bring down a dragon on his own, and Anne is almost equal to him in terms of strength. Meanwhile, Noah thinks he is comparably weak since he can barely handle a goblin. He tells Anne that he thinks she's incredibly talented, but she wouldn't exactly call it talent. She had realized that she had a special power within her back when she was a kid at the orphanage, but she still didn't know what it was. One of her friends saw the glowing light coming from her hand and decided to touch it, but it led to Anne's friend getting injured. This was incredibly traumatic for Anne, but once the adults found out, they quickly healed the girl and called Anne in to discuss her ability. Anne wasn't in any trouble since what happened was an accident, but the adults were rather interested in her ability, so they asked her to demonstrate it. Reluctantly, she shows them her green light, and they recognize this power to be a gift from the heavens. It is an energy that can take the form of a sword to cut down your foes or a shield to protect those she cares about. It is a versatile power that could even destroy a country depending on how she uses it. So the sovereign said they would teach her to use her power correctly. Her training was mainly handled by the shield sovereign Dandel, and before long, she was easily able to form a shield that could stop boulders with ease. However, even with control over her powers, an incident with her friend caused her to constantly fear accidentally hurting others, so she purposefully distanced herself from those around her. But on the day she met Noah, she was shocked to realize that she had heard his name somewhere before. While on a mission with Dandel, he had just saved Anne from a giant mantis, but there were still more monsters up ahead, and the soldiers with them were beginning to show signs of fatigue. So Dandel mentioned how he wished someone like Noah was still around. Noah had earned the approval of her adoptive father before she could, so Anne developed a natural jealousy for this person named Noah, despite never having met him before at the time. That's why she was so hostile to Noah when she first met him, and she honestly still feels jealous. but she doesn't want to let her emotions get in the way of the mission since she has to defend Lin at all costs. As they continue to the fields, Noah notices a strange dead patch in the fields, and Lin immediately realizes that something is not right. So she casts an uncover spell and dispels the concealment magic to reveal a giant poisonous frog. Meanwhile, back at the capital, the situation has gotten pretty bad, just like Rain had predicted. Several monsters have been sighted all across the capital, and while the warrior corps are handling it, they don't have enough soldiers to deal with all the monsters. Rain orders for the swordsman troops to block off the road to halt the advancement of the monsters, and while that's done, he wants the Secret Service and the hunters to assist as much as possible. The king is still in disbelief that Doritos could be petty enough to cause this much destruction just because he didn't get what he wanted. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like Doritos will stop with just this either. So the king asks where the 6 sovereigns are. Rain tells him that all 6 of them have been dispatched to various locations due to exceptionally powerful monsters emerging, so they're a bit busy at the moment. With their forces spread out so thin like this, their chances of victory are dwindling by the minute. But at least Rain managed to get Lin to safety in time. Meanwhile, over with Lin and the others, after Lin had cast the uncover spell, a little boy next to the monster gets attacked, and sees the monster and recognizes it as a black death dragon. But upon seeing the monster attack the little boy, Noah doesn't ask any questions and just leaps into action to defend him. As the monster was about to squish the boy, Noah appears in front of him and parries the strike. Meanwhile, An asks Lin if she noticed how the boy appeared at the same time as the monster, meaning he was being concealed by the spell as well. And that can only mean one thing. The boy must be demon kin. Lin remembers talking about demon kin with Rain once, and the summary is that demon kin are almost identical to humans, but they have the special ability to form mental bonds with monsters at will. So if anything, they are considered to be closer to monsters than humans, and are seen as abominations by most people. There are records that state that Mithra was almost completely wiped out by demon kin 200 years ago, and because of this, demon kin were extensively hunted by humans until they were thought to have gone extinct. However, there are still some surviving demon kin in the world, and due to the course of history and their near extinction, they bear extreme hatred for humans. And since that boy is a demon kin, it means he led the monster here in an attempt to attack the capital with it. And can't believe Noah would help someone who is clearly an enemy. But whenever the case may be, Lin still thinks they should go help Noah. However, An pulls her back and says she won't allow her to help him because it's not safe. While Noah is parrying the attacks of the frog, he realizes that this thing is a lot weaker than the goblin he fought with Lin, so if he can just hold it off until Lin or An can get here, killing it should be easy. However, there's one thing Noah failed to anticipate. As the frog spits some dark gas in his direction, normally Noah would jump out of the way to save himself, but if he did that, then the boy would get hurt. So if he decides to parry the gas instead, unfortunately, this leads to Noah getting poisoned, and the effects are catastrophic for his health. Blood begins seeping out of his mouth and eyes as the poison begins to take effect, and from the amount of damage that has already been done, Noah knows for a fact that it must be a fatal poison. He collapses to the ground as he loses strength in his body, and the frog is about to spit out even more poison. So Lin wants to rush over to save him, but Anne stops her, warning that the next cloud of poison will be far larger, so she would only be putting herself in danger. It is Anne's duty to protect Lin at all costs, so if she can at least make sure Lin survives this, then the kingdom can be revived in the worst-case scenario. Besides, one breath from the Black Death Dragon is a guaranteed death sentence, so even if they had the world's greatest healer on standby right now, they still wouldn't be able to save Noah, as the monster spits out another wave of poison and uses her shields to block it, but some poison manages to seep through. So Lin begins using Purify to try and hold it back, but it isn't enough. While struggling to hold the poison back, Anne apologizes to Noah for leaving him to die. She goes against her morals to ignore someone on the verge of death in front of her, but she is left with no choice. However, to her surprise, she sees Noah still battling the frog even with blood dripping out of his mouth and eyes. She finally understands why Dandel thought so highly of Noah, and it was because of his indomitable will to protect others no matter the cost. But even if Noah wants to keep going, the poison will eventually claim his life. Soon after, Noah collapses to the ground again, and he can see that he is bleeding a lot. But for some reason he says this is good, and it looks like he has a plan to defeat the frog after all. The cursed children, born with the extraordinary ability to control monsters, were ostracized from society. They were imprisoned, their lives reduced to a monotonous routine of confinement and meager sustenance. The ability to command monsters, once used for mundane tasks like herding livestock, had been twisted into a terrifying weapon. Someone had realized the potential of these abilities and harnessed them for warfare, turning innocent children into pawns in a deadly game. So the power has been hated ever since then. While in prison, the boy was given daily beatings for no reason, and upon asking what he did to deserve such cruel treatment, he was just beaten even more until he could hardly be recognized. And on top of that, he was given no food for 3 whole days. After that, he learned not to talk back anymore if he wanted to minimize the pain he would suffer. He was later put on display for the townspeople to insult and attack as they please. The demon kin were typically treated with disdain and brutality, but the boy's situation was uniquely horrific. His ability to read minds, which allowed him to hear the cruel thoughts of his captors, intensified his suffering. Once his mental abilities were discovered, the hatred directed towards him escalated, and he became a target of even greater abuse. Despite enduring unimaginable pain, the thought of revenge never consumed him. He loathed his circumstances, but the idea of harming others was abhorrent to him. He was trapped in a world of cruelty, yet his heart remained filled with compassion. The boy's captor, a cruel and heartless man, ordered him to control 2 monsters and use them to attack a neighboring kingdom. In exchange, he promised to reduce the boy's daily beatings to bi-weekly beatings and even provide slightly less moldy bread. However, if the boy refused, his suffering would be greatly intensified. The boy tried to use his mind-reading ability to see through his captor's deception, but the man was wearing a magical device that blocked his mental powers. Desperate and fearing for his own safety and the well-being of others, the boy was forced to agree to the deal. The boy's heart heavy with sorrow, he reluctantly agreed to his captor's demands. He knew that using his abilities for violence was wrong, but the threat of increased suffering for himself and others forced him into a terrible choice. As he prepared to control the 2 monsters, he couldn't help but feel a sense of dread and guilt. That's when he was determined to use the monster to kill the people of the kingdom. But along the way, the barrier around him was shattered, and he lost focus for a second, so the monster managed to escape his control. As he tries to regain control, the frog knocks him back, and he realizes he has messed up. Because of his failure, the other demon kin are probably going to suffer a lot more than they did before. But while he feels bad for them, he's at least happy that he gets to die without being forced to kill anyone, since he never wanted to cause other people pain. He just hopes that if he gets reborn, he won't be treated so badly in his next life. Maybe he could even have a kind family and eat good food. The boy closed his eyes, preparing for the inevitable. However, just as he was about to be killed, Noor stepped in to defend him. The boy was bewildered, unable to comprehend why someone from the kingdom would risk their life to save him. As the frog fired its poisonous attack, both Noor and the boy were struck. While Noor had the option of using his basic healing magic on himself to neutralize the poison, he chose to use it to save the boy instead, continuing to fight despite his own peril. The boy was filled with a sense of gratitude and wonder as he watched Noor battle the frog. He had never encountered such selfless kindness before. As the battle raged on, the boy realized that he had found a friend, a true ally in Noor. The thought of losing Noor to the poison filled him with dread, and he prayed silently for his friend's safety. Before long, Noor ended up collapsing due to all the poison in his system. But he is still confident that he can get through this. Noor's confidence comes from a time in his childhood after his mother had died and he had returned to his home. He went out into the forest one day to gather some ingredients for dinner that night, and after spending all day in the forest, he had gathered quite a collection of herbs. He wasn't sure what all the herbs were exactly, but what's the worst that could happen if he just chucked it all into his soup for dinner? This is the worst that could happen. Noor is currently bleeding out on the floor because the soup turned out to be highly poisonous, and with no one around to help him, he was bound to die if he didn't do something to save himself quickly. So he used his low healing ability to try to recover a little. Thankfully, the low heal allowed him to survive till morning, and once he is finally able to stand again, he heads outside to wash his face, and then heads to the library to figure out what he just ate. He realizes that the red herb he brought is called Dragon Ruin, and his mom had even once specifically warned him never to eat it. So he can't believe he made such a stupid mistake. But being poisoned isn't going to be enough to get him to stop working. Noor struggles with all his might to make it outside so he can keep up with his daily training, but the poison has greatly weakened him, so he ends up falling to the ground in pain. He uses low heal once more to try to make himself feel better, and to his surprise, he wakes up a while later after blacking out, and he is feeling a lot better than before. His stomach doesn't hurt anymore, which is a good thing. But he can also now tell that he's incredibly hungry, so he heads back into the forest to find something to eat. As he does this, he is very careful not to pick another dragon ruin plant, and while he's definitely not going to make the same mistake again, as he is inspecting the plant, he gets bitten in the ass by a poison spike snake. He manages to punch it to death, but the snake is known to be extremely venomous, so Noor soon collapses to the ground because of it. However, while any ordinary person would have already been dead by now, Noor wakes up a couple of hours later, and he seems perfectly fine once again. He can hardly believe that he survived that, and since he already killed the snake, he decides to take it home and try eating it. He figured that if he was able to survive the snake's bite, then he couldn't possibly face any negative side effects from getting bitten. And this time, he was right since the poison didn't have much of an effect on him, and it actually turns out to be quite delicious. The following day, Noor heads out to test his hypothesis, so he finds another poison spike and forces it to bite him so that he can see what happens. And just like he had thought, the venom seems to be spreading through his body a lot slower than it did yesterday, so he believes he has acquired some kind of poison resistance. He was excited since he believed this may be the key to unlocking some kind of new skill. So Noor began intentionally seeking out poisonous things to eat in hopes of gaining a new skill. He would end up collapsing from a poison overdose on occasion, but he would always get back up and keep eating. No matter how much blood he lost in the process, he never did gain any poison-related skills, but through his poisonous meal intake, he ended up really liking the taste of poisonous things, which is why right now, even though he is being threatened by the monster, he can only think about how good the frog is going to taste after he kills it. The frog lunged at Noor, trying to crush him. However, Noor nimbly backflipped out of the way, landing safely on his feet. The frog's poison, while potent, had initially taken some time for Noor's body to naturally counteract. This was why he had collapsed for a moment. But by now, he had developed a resistance to the frog's poison attacks. With renewed vigor, Noor resumed his fight against the creature. Noor's movements were now more fluid and precise. He dodged the frog's attacks with ease, his body reacting instinctively to the creature's every move. The frog, sensing its defeat, retreated into the shadows, leaving Noor victorious. As he stood alone in the forest, a sense of accomplishment washed over him. He had not only survived the poison, but he had also overcome the fear that had once held him captive. As he parries the frog's strikes, Noor ends up destroying all of its claws, and as it tries jumping at him, he parries its face and shatters all its teeth as well. The frog has now realized that it won't be able to handle Noor normally, so it starts charging up a huge poison blast, and Noor assumes this must be a frog's desperate attempt at survival. However, to Noor, it's nothing but a free meal, so before it can release the poison, Noor uses his sword to slam its mouth shut, causing all the poison to build up inside its body and make the frog explode. Noor is glad he managed to defeat it. But he can't help but wonder how such a poisonous frog got all the way out into this field in the first place. But it works out for him since the more poisonous something is, the tastier it is for Noor. Just then, he remembers that there's a kid behind him, so he turns around to ask the boy if he is all right. The boy answers that he is fine, but he looks pretty sickly to Noor, so he wants to have Lin properly heal him once they are done here. He asks the boy what he's doing out here, and the boy doesn't want to lie, so he tells Noor that he's the one who brought the frog here. Noor had agreed to bring the frog into the city, and now he was grappling with the boy's words. As a lover of poisonous food, Noor immediately thought of the Black Death Dragon as livestock, leading him to conclude that the boy must be a frog farmer. He also realized that the boy had likely been hiding himself in a barrier to protect his valuable frog meat. Believing he had ruined the boy's meat delivery, Noor began apologizing profusely. He offered to pay the boy back for the frog meat, even if it took years, but the boy assured him that it was unnecessary. Noor accepts this, but he is still curious as to how a young boy like him managed to get that frog this far in the first place. The boy hesitantly answers that he has the ability to control monsters, so that's what he used to bring the monster here. Noor thinks the boy must have some kind of amazing skill to be able to do that, but the boy clarifies that it's not a skill, rather it's an ability he was born with. The boy revealed that he was a demon kin, and Noor was surprised by his lack of hostility. Instead, Noor found himself pondering the possibilities of having such powers. He imagined using animals to help with his farm work, sending messages to birds, and living without fear of monster attacks. He even wished he had the ability himself. The boy asked Noor if he was not afraid of him and his abilities, but Noor saw no reason to be scared. He believed that the boy's abilities were incredibly useful. Noor's openness and acceptance of the boy's demon kin heritage surprised and touched him. The boy had been treated with fear and prejudice for his entire life, and it was refreshing to meet someone who didn't see him as a monster. As they continued to talk, a bond began to form between them, a bond based on mutual respect and understanding. The boy is shocked to learn that Noor thinks his ability is useful, so he breaks down in tears because he never believed his life could have such meaning to it. Noor sees a lot of himself in the boy, but he doesn't understand why he has so little self-worth when he has such a great skill. He assumes there must be some extenuating circumstances involved, but he knows the boy will be able to become a great person someday, so he assures the kid that he has a bright future ahead of him. Just then, the others come running over to check on Noor, and Lin wants to begin healing him immediately. But Noor says he is perfectly fine, so she doesn't need to worry. Lin can't believe Noor is actually alright after taking a hit from the Black Death Dragon, since the dragon's breath isn't just poisonous, it is an extreme concentration of miasma that would corrupt even the soil. So how on earth could Noor have withstood it? She could only think of one possible explanation. She recalled how the Saint Sovereign had once taught her a technique called Sacred Spirit. This technique, achieved through intense training of the body and mind, could negate all forms of corruption and purify everything the user touched. It had taken the Saint Sovereign 40 years to master, yet Noor had accomplished it in less than half the time, and he was unaware of his achievement. Noor then asks Lin if she could heal his new friend here, but the boy says he doesn't need any healing either since he's perfectly unharmed. Lin immediately recognized the boy as a demon kin, but Noor didn't see why that was a problem. He suggested that they let the boy join them in the carriage, offering him a ride. Lin, however, knew that demon kin were feared and often killed on sight. She questioned Noor's decision to bring the boy with them, especially after he had caused such destruction. Noor admitted that the ruined field was unfortunate, but felt obligated to help the boy who had killed the poison frog he had worked so hard to obtain. Lin was torn between her fear of demon kin and her respect for Noor. She knew that Noor was a kind and compassionate person, and she trusted his judgment. However, the thought of a demon kin traveling with them filled her with unease. Lin is worried about the risks that bringing the boy along might cause. She thinks about the possible dangers that could arise from having someone like him around, especially given his background and what he's been through. Even though she feels uneasy and has her doubts, Lin eventually decides to trust Noor's instincts. She hopes that Noor's decision to include the boy will turn out to be the right one and that things won't go wrong because of it. As they talk more, Noor recalls that the boy mentioned making a promise to someone about bringing the frog to this place. Curious, Noor asks the boy who that person is. The boy, looking unsure and a bit lost, tells him that he doesn't know who it is. He explains that the people who gave him the order never told him any details about who they were or why they wanted the frog brought there. Lin can tell that he isn't lying. Lin can tell from the boy's weak and weary appearance, as well as the way he carries himself, that he has likely been treated as a slave wherever he came from. She knows that in the Kingdom of Clays, slavery is not allowed, but she also understands that other places might not have the same rules. It dawns on her that the boy probably didn't have a choice in what he did and was most likely forced into this situation. Wanting to help, Lin gently asks the boy if he remembers the way back to the place he came from, hoping to get more information. However, the boy explains that he was blindfolded before being taken to a remote, unfamiliar area and then was simply told to walk in a certain direction. Lin now realizes she may have misjudged the boy, so she asks Noor if they can take Rollo on their journey after all. But there's one major problem with that idea, and it's the fact that demon kin are banned from entering Mithra at all, so if they try to take Rollo there, they may be seen as enemies. Just then, they hear a voice from behind them, and they see a man standing there who is surprised because he expected Rollo to have died already. Then they hear a voice from behind them and see a man standing there who is surprised because he expected Rollo to have died already. The man also notices that Rollo messed up his job of delivering the frog and seems to know about the delivery. He asks if he is the one who ordered Rollo to do this, and the man says it wasn't him. He was just hired to take out Rollo and aid the progress of the mission. He asks Nord if he is the one who killed the frog, and Nord confirms that it was him. Nord apologizes, still thinking the frog was meant to be eaten, but the man tells him he doesn't care about the frog, he was just hired to get Rollo. The man then disappears and reappears behind the group. Nord parries his attack, confused as to why the man attacked out of nowhere. Realizing that Nord won't be an easy opponent, the man takes a step back and calmly asks if Nord would be willing to hand the boy over to him without a fight. Rollo is apparently worth a lot of money, but only as a corpse. Since Nord obviously isn't going to just let him kill Rollo, the man strikes again. Nord is still having a hard time understanding why the man would want to kill Rollo. The man explains that he could bring Rollo back alive, but his client would still murder him anyway, so why go through all that trouble? He thinks he is doing Rollo a favor by ending his life quickly. Nord still doesn't get what's going on. The man gives up trying to explain things and tries to jump over Nord's head to strike Rollo, but Nord manages to keep up with him and knocks the assassin back, breaking his dagger in the process. Both Nord and the assassin are moving so fast that Lin can barely keep track of them. Anne tries to keep Lin close by to protect her in case they get caught in the crossfire. The assassin is starting to get really annoyed with how tough Nord is, so he pulls out more daggers and attempts to strike him multiple times. However, Nord manages to defend against each strike and pushes him back. The assassin sees Nord as a genuine obstacle to his mission and decides to start seriously trying to kill him. He dashes forward at an insane speed and attempts to stab Nord in the face, but Nord once again manages to parry the attack, although it sends him flying backward. Once Nord regains his footing, he remarks on the incredible force someone can generate with such a small knife. The assassin is surprised that Nord was able to block such a powerful attack and even shattered another of his daggers. The assassin thinks that Nord is really interesting and pulls out another dagger, dashing in to overwhelm him. Despite his best efforts, Nord is still holding his ground, but he's not going to be able to last much longer while protecting Rollo, as he can't keep up with the assassin's attacks based on instinct alone. The pressure from their fight is so intense that Anne has to put up a shield to ensure Lin isn't caught in the chaos. Anne recognizes the assassin's fashion sense from the former S-rank adventurer, the deadman Zedu, who had attended a meeting with all the sovereigns. She recalls some old documents about a target declared officially dead, but remembers no one actually went after him. The sovereigns had decided it was better to leave that mission alone because Zedu was too strong and dangerous. Gilbert is interested to learn more about Zedu, who had become the apex of all heroes at a young age, but used his powers irresponsibly, leading him to be a wanted man. Despite his actions, the guild decided to pretend he was dead to avoid provoking him further. Back with Zedu, he has just lost another dagger and is upset because he has almost used up his entire collection in the fight against Nord. Nord apologizes for ruining his daggers, but Zedu says he wasn't looking for an apology. He finds it strange that his daggers keep breaking as they are made of orichalcum and dragon tusk, which should make them practically indestructible. He is also curious about the sword Nord is using, which is unlike anything he has ever seen before. Deciding it's better to play it safe, Zedu uses his trump card and throws his ultimate weapon into the air. It begins to glow red, and in a flash of red light, Unlimited Blade Works is activated. Thousands of blades now point straight at Nord, and no matter how many of them Nord destroys, Zedu can always create more. Nord tries his best to parry all the attacks but is forced to let himself get stabbed to protect Rollo. Anne wants to help but hesitates because her mission is to ensure Lin's safety. However, she decides to help Nord, realizing that having him around would greatly improve Lin's chances of surviving. Anne uses her shields to attack Zedu, and Nord is impressed. While it keeps Zedu busy, her attacks don't seem to touch him. Anne asks Nord to help her out a little. She can handle their defense but lacks the speed to take down Zedu, which is why she needs Nord's help. Nord isn't sure he can handle blades moving this fast, but he has managed to hit faster moving targets before. He picks up one of the broken claws from the frog and tells Anne he has an idea. On his signal, Anne should drop the shield directly in front of him. Nord activates his physical enhancement and stone throw abilities, turning his arm into an anti-aircraft missile launcher. The claw fragments destroy all the crosses headed their way, and as he reloads, he asks Anne to drop the shield again, continuing to destroy more of Zedu's blades. Zedu, noticing Anne sneaking up behind him and nearly getting stabbed, is surprised that Nord was able to parry the attack and break another one of his daggers. Zedu asks Nord how he keeps managing to see through his attacks, but Nord can't really explain. He just kind of knows how to react. Zedu feels there must be a secret behind Nord's power, but decides to leave it for another day. After the blades Nord destroyed, Zedu realizes he will need to replace them, so he gives up on collecting the reward for Rollo and decides to head to the kingdom, where something interesting is going on. Anne asks Zedu what he means by something interesting, but Zadu doesn't know the details, just that it will be extravagant. He tells Rollo he is lucky Nord is here because no matter what kind of attack he tries, Nord is always one step ahead. Zadu attempts one last sneak attack, but Nord blocks it with ease. Unable to complete his mission while Nord is around, Zadu teleports away with his magic. Nord breathes a sigh of relief now that Zadu is gone, but Lin is concerned about the event taking place at the capital. She asks if they should head back to the capital, and Rollo starts to shiver in fear. He had heard his captors talking about a terrifying monster that would make the Black Death Dragon look like a tiny frog. Lin says they need to hurry back to the capital because the situation is more dire than she had initially thought. She asks Nord if he is willing to come with her, and though he agrees, Anne informs them that they can't go. She was about to tell Lin about the order from Rain, but Lin already knows. Rain had instructed her to escape with Lin if anything happened in the capital. Lin understands but can't accept being the only one to escape while the kingdom remains in danger. Anne eventually agrees to go back, but wants Lin to promise not to leave her side. Rollo decides to go with them, feeling partially responsible for the incident and wanting to help resolve it. Nord pats Rollo on the head, impressed by his responsibility, but Lin notices the profound look on Nord's face and thinks he must be reflecting deeply. In reality, Nord is just regretting not having tasted the poison frog. Back at the capital, the city lies in ruins, but thanks to the efforts of the 6 sovereigns, they have managed to hold their ground. The problem now is that Rain doesn't know where the next attack will come from. It could be from the north, south, or even above. Although reports indicate no sightings of flying beasts, Rain spots something in the sky. He casts an uncover spell and finds a dragon looming over the city, a dragon of calamity. The title of Dragon Slayer was given to the hero from Nora's storybook after he killed an evil dragon that had been terrorizing the land. The hero in Nora's storybook, after defeating the evil dragon that had been terrorizing the land, was awarded the prestigious title Dragon Slayer. Nor was so impressed by this that he expressed his desire to slay a dragon himself. However, his father quickly reminded him that slaying a dragon was no easy task. He explained that some dragons were incredibly powerful and had lived for thousands of years. A single one could easily destroy an entire continent or reduce mountains to rubble. As Noor and his companions were returning to the capital, Noor sensed something was amiss. He alerted his companions to his feeling that a monster, perhaps a dragon, was lurking nearby. The others don't see anything, but Noor can clearly sense something and even points towards it. A moment later, the Dragon of Calamity is revealed as it looms over the city. People began to panic, and Rain couldn't believe the Empire would be dumb enough to unleash something like this upon the world just because they didn't get to steal the dungeons. The Dragon of Calamity, a legendary creature known for its immense power and destructive capabilities, was believed to be asleep for at least another few centuries. However, the Empire, in a misguided attempt to gain power and control, had chosen to awaken it. This decision set the dragon on a path that would lead to the destruction of the kingdom. Rain, the ruler of the kingdom, recognizing the imminent danger, ordered everyone to evacuate the capital immediately. From the rooftops, the sovereign, a powerful being with exceptional senses, sensed that magic was being used to block the evacuation roads. This was a deliberate tactic by the Empire to keep the sovereigns, the powerful leaders of the kingdom's various regions, busy and prevent them from uniting to face the dragon. King Clays is looking out the window as certain doom approaches, and Gilbert tries to convince him that he should evacuate as well. King Clays tells him to go help evacuate the citizens and make sure they are safe. But he has his own duty to fulfill, so he can't leave the capital yet. Ains watches as the dragon flies over the city, and it will undoubtedly lead to the total destruction of the capital. So they must have already begun evacuation efforts in order to get the citizens out safely. But Lin knows that her father would never evacuate. He would likely use himself as a shield between the dragon and his people. But even someone as powerful as King Clays stands absolutely no chance against that dragon. Lin was heartbroken at the thought of both her kingdom and her family being destroyed. The impending doom was a heavy weight on her shoulders. However, Noor was simply amazed, as this was the first time he had ever seen a real dragon. He had previously mistaken another creature, a farm frog, for a dragon, highlighting his lack of experience with such mythical creatures. He asked Lin if her father and brother were still in the capital. She was confident that they would choose to stay behind and ensure everyone's safety, but she knew it was too late for them to help now as they were still so far away from the kingdom. The urgency of the situation was palpable, and the weight of responsibility felt heavy on Lin's shoulders. Noor doesn't think the distance is that much of a problem since he can probably make it if he runs, but Lin is shocked to hear that Noor thinks he can make it since the kingdom is still nearly 100 kilometers away, and it's going to be destroyed in a couple of minutes. He says they can use the same trick they use against the goblin in the forest, so he wants Lin to hit him with the strongest wind blast she can generate, and he will do the rest. He owes a lot to the people of that city, so he wants to at least help Rain and King Clay's escape if he can. And if Noor says he can make it, then Lin decides to put her faith in him and stop hesitating. King Clay's recalls the meeting he had with the Emperor, where the Emperor threatened to crush the kingdom if he didn't get what he wanted. But King Clay's didn't budge and told him that he would never give up the Dungeon of the Lost. The Emperor believed that such a valuable resource was being squandered under the king's rule. He was convinced that if he were to fully harness the power within it, he could easily dominate the world. However, King Clay's believed that it was best to avoid interfering with powers that one could not control. The Emperor clearly had a different perspective, as the dragon was certainly not controllable. Despite this, the Emperor seemed unconcerned about the potential consequences as long as he ultimately gained control of the dungeon. His ambition was so great that he was willing to risk the destruction of everything in order to achieve his goal. King Clay's underestimated how ruthless the Emperor could be, so if he could do things differently, he might have just let him have the dungeon to begin with. However, what's done is done, and the only thing he can think of is if Lin managed to make it to safety in the end. He doesn't think he is fit to be king of a nation like this, as he is much more suited to a life on the battlefield. He apologizes to the people of the kingdom who have been doomed because they followed him, and while it may not be enough to atone for his mistakes, King Clay's is going to make sure that before he dies, he takes out one of that dragon's eyes. Back at Noor's location, In, using her divine shield, created a cylindrical shape to focus Lin's wind blast. She asked Noor to stand in front of it, and he complied, trusting in her plan. Lin then prepared herself, concentrating deeply as she cast every magic barrier she knew how to make on the cylinder to ensure no energy was wasted. While it was Noor who had originally suggested this idea, he was starting to have second thoughts as the contraption looked increasingly dangerous. The combination of the wind blast and the magic barriers created a powerful yet unstable force that could potentially cause great harm if not handled with care. The tension was palpable as they prepared for the final step, their hearts pounding in their chests. Once Lin is done casting all the barriers, she tells Noor that she's about to fire the wind blast, but it will be a lot stronger than it was last time, so he should brace himself for impact. Noor called out to Lin, asking her to wait for a moment. However, it was too late. Lin had already poured everything she had into the spell and cast a six-fold wind blast, launching Noor at an incredible speed towards the capital. Meanwhile, the dragon, towering above the king, began charging up its dragon's breath, preparing to obliterate him. This was the same flame that had burned the continent to a crisp hundreds of years ago, leaving no doubt that King Clay's would not survive a direct hit. King Clay's realizes this himself, but even if he is going to be killed, he has to make sure he does something cool before he dies, so he pulls out a sword and prepares to hit the dragon with everything he has got. The sword King Clay's was wielding was known as the Blast Sword. It channeled all of the user's mana into a single devastating strike, but at the devastating cost of the user's life. It seemed that King Clay's was willing to sacrifice himself for a chance to wound the dragon. However, just as King Clay's was about to unleash the strike, Noor appeared out of nowhere, his arrival a blur of motion. With incredible skill, he parried the dragon's face, causing the dragon's breath to be fired into the sky and knocking the dragon to the ground. The unexpected intervention had turned the tide of the battle, giving the kingdom a glimmer of hope. The dragon, stunned and disoriented, was momentarily vulnerable. It was a moment that Noor and the others had been waiting for, a chance to strike back against the monstrous creature that had threatened their world. The dragon has no idea what knocked it out, but once it regains consciousness and sees Noor standing there, it realizes that he must have been the one who did it, so it tries to crush him with its tail. However, Noor parries it and sends the dragon falling to the ground again. Noor thought he was going to die after Lin initially shot him here. But he regained consciousness just in time for him to gain control with his physical enhancement and jump over the walls of the castle. However, Noor couldn't stop himself, so he ended up flying into the dragon and had to parry it. He never wanted to get shot like a cannonball again, but Noor was surprised by how easy it was for him to parry the dragon, even though it was supposed to be a nation-ending calamity. The dragon's size was shocking, but the impact from Lin's wind blast had been much scarier to him. Noor was confident that he could put up a good fight against the dragon, but he stood ready to face it. Despite his fear, he knew that he had to do everything he could to protect his kingdom and his friends. Meanwhile, Lin and Ins have arrived at the capital, and they intend to rescue King Clays while Noor distracts the Elder Dragon. Along the way, a huge building piece comes hurtling towards them, causing Lin to fall to the ground, but Ins manages to keep her safe by putting up a shield. Lin thanks Ins for saving her life, but as she looks forward, she sees several goblin emperors heading their way. These monsters are all a lot smaller than the one she and Noor fought in the forest, but a goblin emperor is still a formidable monster, so she doesn't know how they are going to handle them. She needs to start thinking like Noor would, so she tells herself that these are just regular goblins, so it should be easy to take them down. Ins understands what Lin is trying to say, and it's true that the goblin emperors really aren't that big of a threat compared to the Elder Dragon that Noor is currently fighting. They hold their ground, and as the goblins charge toward them, Lin fires an ice spell at them. However, the goblins are too fast for the attacks to land. Rollo realizes he has to do something, so he uses his powers and orders the monsters to stand still, and the goblins all freeze in place. Lin takes the opportunity to use ice magic to freeze the goblins in place, while Ins uses her power to create a sword and slash through them all. With that, they have successfully slain the goblin emperors, and Lin is really impressed with Ins, because not only is she worthy of being known as the Divine Shield, but she can also cut down any foe with her Divine Sword. And then there's Rollo, who was able to stop those goblin emperors with just a few words. She knows he is a demon folk, but the fact that a boy like him has so much power is insane. Meanwhile, the dragon is having an existential crisis over the fact that this tiny human is parrying every attack he throws at it. And even worse, despite the dragon's claws and scales being supposedly indestructible, Noor is slowly chipping away at it and causing damage to the dragon, and Noor is barely breaking a sweat. Noor is impressed that his sword still isn't even slightly damaged after all the parrying he has been doing, so he is starting to wonder what this thing is made of. The dragon realizes it won't be able to beat Noor with physical attacks, but that doesn't mean it will lose, since it has an attack that it is sure Noor won't be able to parry. The dragon flies into the air and begins charging up another dragon's breath attack, which it fires straight at Noor, but Noor isn't fazed and parries it anyway. We all knew it was coming, but Noor had officially parried a nuke. The dragon can't believe what just happened, and Rollo can tell that it's angry but also frustrated because Noor isn't treating it as a serious threat, even though it's trying its best to be destructive. The Elder Dragon is a prideful beast that believes it is the most powerful creature, so for Noor to counter it so easily is a real blow to its ego. So it desperately tries to attack him one last time to assert its strength, but Noor once again parries its attack and breaks one of the dragon's claws in the process, which was the moment the dragon realizes that Noor is simply stronger than it, so it gets on the ground and submits to Noor. Everyone who just witnessed this is speechless, and Noor doesn't really know what's going on either, but it looks like the dragon doesn't want to fight anymore, so it is his victory. He recalls the story from his youth and how the hero in his book killed a dragon and used the materials from it to bring wealth and prosperity to the land. But even though this dragon caused so much damage, Noor can't bring himself to kill it, so he just sits down in front of it. Noah can't bring himself to kill it, so he just sits down in front of it. Noah notices the others running over to check on him, so he gets up and tells them he is fine. They are shocked that Noah was able to take down a dragon with no injuries, but Noah says it is all thanks to Rollo because he assumes Rollo was the one who made the dragon calm down. Rollo may have stopped the goblins, but he had nothing to do with stopping the dragon and tells Noah as much. But if that is the case, then it makes no sense why the dragon stopped attacking. Noah is still oblivious to the fact that he shattered the dragon's ego, so he comes to the conclusion that Rollo must have been the one to stop it, and is just lying about it so people don't fear him. He decides to just accept the credit for Rollo's sake. But he has a request. He wants Rollo to send the dragon back to where it came from. However, Lin is against the idea since the dragon is a serious threat and needs to be dealt with immediately. Noah knows that the safest option would be to kill the dragon now, but he can't bring himself to actually do it. So as long as the dragon isn't hurting anyone, Noah wants to let it live. He knows his request is a bit selfish, but he would like Lin to at least consider it. Lin thinks about it for a second, and while she does not fully support the idea, if it is what Noah wants, she's willing to go along with it. Noah is glad to hear it, so now that he has permission, he asks Rollo if he can command the dragon to leave. Rollo agrees, but with how powerful the dragon is, he can't exactly command it to do anything. The best he can do is politely ask it to leave and hope it listens. Rollo nervously walks up to the dragon and relays Noah's request, but to his surprise, the dragon immediately agrees and says it will do whatever its master asks. Everyone is shocked that the dragon used the word master, but while the others correctly deduce that the dragon is referring to Noah as its master, Noah thinks the dragon is referring to Rollo instead. Regardless of who the master is, it works out in everyone's favor if the dragon will listen to Noah's requests. So Noah adds a condition that the dragon is not allowed to harm humans anymore. Rollo relays the information and the dragon says it understands. It then gets up, flies into the air, lets out one last roar, and flies away. However, as the dragon is leaving, a laser beam is fired, sending the dragon crashing into the forest. The one behind the laser beam is none other than the Emperor, and he mockingly states that even a mighty dragon is no more than a pawn in his hand, and he can discard it whenever he wants. He uses his telescope to look over what's left of the kingdom, and he is honestly surprised that it is still standing because he thought the dragon would have blown it up by now. But in the end, it does not make much of a difference because he can just finish off the kingdom himself. He gives the order for his troops to begin their attack, and with a wave of a hand, hundreds of troops start spawning with swords, guns, and cannons. Before this plan was carried out, the Emperor's advisor filled him in on the details. The plan was to have a well-known beast tamer awaken the Dragon of Calamity and make it attack the kingdom. While the dragon is on a rampage, the Emperor's troops would march in, equipped with magic swords, armor, and cannons. Furthermore, they would have 4 ultra-high output Monterey guns on standby. The Emperor was pleased with this plan, but before it was set into motion, a knight named Randus approached and asked the Emperor to reconsider. He thinks this whole plan is going a little too far for a personal beef with the Empire, and he does not see how any of this destruction would benefit the Empire in the long run. The Emperor does not want to hear any of Randus' logical arguments, so he kicks him in the face and declares that his empire is at the forefront of magical technology in this world, so he can do whatever he wants. He plans to spin a story blaming the Kingdom of Clays for its own downfall. He will falsely claim that the kingdom failed to maintain the dungeon, which led to the dragon escaping and attacking it. And he will paint himself as the benevolent ruler who stepped in to save them from their own mistakes. No one will ever know that his story is a lie because all the people from the Kingdom of Clays who know the truth will be dead by then. Noah and the others are led to the crash site of the dragon, and Noah is horrified by what happened to it, hoping that it managed to survive somehow. There is no way of knowing if it is alive unless they get closer. But at the same time, Rollo spots something else that looks like trouble. Similarly, the Emperor's men have spotted Noah's group, so the Emperor grabs a pair of binoculars and takes a look for himself. He spots the group and gets a look at Noah, but he has no idea who Noah is, so he does not care. Instead, he is much more interested in the presence of Lin since she is known all around the world as the Divine Shield. The Emperor assumes that she may have been the one who stopped the dragon from destroying the city entirely, but he isn't fazed by her presence at all. He plans to prove that he and his empire's technological advancements are far superior to a living legend such as Lin. He orders his men to get the ray gun ready to fire at the group. Even if Lin is known as the Divine Shield, he believes there is no way she's capable of blocking a laser beam that took down a dragon in one hit. Once the ray gun is aimed and ready to be fired, the troops shoot it straight at the group. The group sees it coming, but it is too late to react at this point since it has already been fired. Lin takes Rollo by the hand and tries to get him out of there, but Lin is stunned in place by the magnitude of the blast heading straight for her. However, just before she could be hit with the blast, Noah stepped in front of her and parries it. The energy from the blast creates a huge shockwave, but ultimately, thanks to Noah's quick reaction, everyone remains unharmed. The Emperor can't believe what he just saw since there should be no way for anyone to block a hit from his ray gun. So the soldier in charge of the ray gun suggests that it might have been a misfire due to a problem with the magic condenser. The Emperor accepted that explanation and ordered the troops to get a second ray gun ready and fire at the group again. Noah is relieved that he managed to block that laser, but he has no idea what it was or why it was fired at them to begin with. On top of that, there are a ton of people from the Imperial Army standing below them. There are at least 10,000 soldiers here, and though they don't have exact details on what the Emperor's plan is, it is clear that he intends to annihilate the kingdom with his army. Lin says there is nothing they can do to stop the Empire here, so she suggests that they should retreat for now. Lin agrees and suggests retreating back to the capital, but she wants to know what Noah intends to do. Noah says it is pretty obvious that there is only one thing for him to do, and internally, he's thinking that he has no choice but to run away. However, Lin mistakes his statement for a declaration that he wants to stay and fight. Just then, Lin realizes that the Empire is firing more lasers at them, so before they hit, she raises a shield to keep everyone safe. The shield is strong enough to hold off the blasts, and the Emperor is rather irritated that it is so difficult to kill Lin. But his soldier tells him that he should head to the rear for his safety while they take care of it. Back on Lin's and Noah's end, they are going to be pinned down here indefinitely unless they do something. So Noah realizes that there is only one way to make it out of there. Lin asks him what he has in mind, so Noah tells them that he will draw the attention of the army and buy some time for the rest of them to escape. In his mind, Noah thinks to himself that he is bad at fighting, but he believes he is well versed in the art of running away, so as long as he runs around like crazy, he is sure that things will work out eventually. He tells Lin that he won't do anything too reckless and that he intends to make it out alive, so she does not need to worry about him. Lin understands that Noah needs to do this for their sake, but if he's going to be putting himself in the line of fire as a distraction, she wants to help him as much as possible. Noah is happy to receive her support and suggests she provide him with a means to escape, which she agrees to. Lin calls upon the spirits of the wind to help Noah by giving him a tailwind that boosts his speed. With this boost, Noah is ready to carry out his plan, so he dashes off toward the Imperial Army, hoping to buy some time. As Noah dashes toward the Imperial Army, he feels the wind spirit's power surge through him, making him move faster than he ever thought possible. His heart races not just from the speed but from the sheer insanity of what he's doing. Thousands of soldiers stand before him, armed with weapons that could kill him in an instant, yet here he is, running straight at them. The soldiers spot him coming, but they're more confused than anything else. Who in their right mind would charge at an entire army alone? Some think it is a suicide mission, while others assume there is no way one person could be a threat to them. The Emperor watches from a distance, still in disbelief over how his previous attack was deflected. He orders his men to capture Noah alive if possible. He's curious about who this person is and why he has such strange abilities. As Noah gets closer, he starts weaving in and out of the soldiers, dodging their attempts to grab or strike him. His movements are so erratic and unpredictable that the soldiers can't land a hit on him. They try to box him in, but every time they think they have him, he slips through their grasp like water. It is almost as if the wind itself is guiding him. Noah isn't a skilled fighter, but his agility and speed make up for it. He dodges a sword swing here, ducks under a spear thrust there, and even manages to trip a few soldiers as he runs past them. The soldiers start to panic. They're used to fighting in organized formations, not chasing down a single person who seems to be everywhere at once. The chaos Noah creates disrupts their ranks, and they start to lose their composure. Meanwhile, Lin and Rollo use the opportunity Noah has created to retreat back toward the capital. Lin is amazed by how effective Noah's plan is. She was worried that he'd get overwhelmed, but he managed to keep the entire army distracted. Rollo is more concerned though. He knows that Noah can't keep this up forever. Eventually, he'll tire out, and when that happens, the soldiers will overwhelm him. Back on the battlefield, Noah notices that the soldiers are starting to adapt to his movements. They're spreading out, trying to encircle him, so he decides it is time to change tactics. He sprints toward one of the Imperial cannons, ducking under gunfire as he goes. Once he reaches it, he quickly examines the controls. He has no idea how to operate a cannon, but he figures it can't be too complicated. He pulls a lever and is surprised when the cannon actually fires, sending a massive blast toward a group of soldiers. The explosion causes even more chaos, and Noah grins despite himself. He's not much of a fighter, but maybe he can do some real damage after all. He moves to the next cannon and does the same thing, firing it into the ranks of the Imperial Army. The soldiers are now in complete disarray, and some start retreating, thinking they're under attack by a larger force. The Emperor is furious. His well-organized assault is falling apart because of one man. He orders his elite guard to deal with Noah personally. These soldiers are much more skilled than the regular troops, and they won't be so easily fooled by Noah's tricks. Noah sees the elite guard coming and knows he's in trouble. These soldiers are faster and more coordinated, and they start to close in on him. He tries to keep moving, but he's starting to tire. The boost from the wind spirits is wearing off, and his legs are starting to feel like lead. Just when it seems like the elite guard will catch him, a massive roar echoes across the battlefield. Everyone stops and looks up to see the dragon that the emperor had shot down earlier. It is battered and bleeding, but still very much alive, and it is angry. The dragon lands in the midst of the imperial army, crushing soldiers under its massive claws. It lets out another roar, and this time, flames burst from its mouth, engulfing the nearest soldiers. Noah can't believe his eyes. He thought the dragon was out of the picture, but here it is, causing mayhem among the imperial army. Turns out the dragon's back because Noah spared its life, and it's now returning the favor by attacking Noah's enemies. The battlefield is a total disaster. The dragon plows through the imperial forces like they're made of paper. The emperor orders a retreat, but it's too late. His soldiers are scattering in panic. The elite guard tries to mount a defense, but gets quickly overwhelmed. Noah seizes the chance to escape. He knows the dragon is giving him a breather, but he doesn't want to push his luck. He dashes back to find Lin and Rollo, hoping they've made it out safely. As he runs, he hears a final thunderous roar from the dragon. Looking back, he sees it soaring into the sky, still spewing flames. The battlefield is left in ruins, the imperial army decimated, and the emperor's plan in shambles. When Noah catches up with Lin and Rollo at the capital's edge, they're relieved to see him. Lin fusses over him, making sure he's not hurt, while Noah insists he's just tired. Rollo is still in shock. Lin praises Noah for his bravery, claiming he turned the tide of the battle. Noah, still catching his breath, just shrugs and says it was luck. He's glad it's over and has learned that sometimes it's not about being the strongest. It's about doing whatever it takes to protect those you care about, even if it means running straight into danger.